going forward. And that would be something that I would certainly support that approach, and get works commenced, because every works that are commenced do start to mitigate the risks that are.
I would imagine that if the Forth estuary is rising 10 millimetres per year and the water table's rising as well, then there must be a figure put on before our flood defences at present are overrun. So I would imagine the timescale isn't determined by whether we'll get money for the Scottish Government, but determined by nature. And it looks as though it could be about 10 years. So I think we need to really move quickly on this. And if we aren't managing to reassure the Scottish Government to fund the biggest project that will go ahead in Scotland, then they're throwing us to the time and tide, and they really need to get their act together.
Convener, I'm not aware of the detail in terms of the rise in water level, but my colleague Alistair, who leads on the project, may be able to provide some further indication on those.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Alistair.
Good morning. Yeah, the scheme that has been notified last year, and we're still obviously going through that notification process, takes into account an element of climate change in it. So there are estimates of what those defence levels need to be based on future climate change. So that is obviously included in the project, but we are obviously bound by the notification process, which we hope will conclude with the final decision at Council next year. And then, as you say, having the funding made available to commence those construction phases.
Okay, thank you, Alistair. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I just want to ask officers possibly to bring out their crystal balls, but to say a little bit about how likely we think that that the money that has been identified in this report for the first priority activities, how likely the Scottish Government is to be forthcoming, since that is obviously the crunch point.
Okay, thank you, Convener. The short answer is we're pretty positive. We've had an active engagement with colleagues at Scottish Government. We have been asked to submit some business case proposals for that design element of works, and colleagues are currently working through that. In terms of the Council's share of the funding, as we've outlined in the report, it would appear at this stage that those initial design works are affordable within the TIF funding envelope. And we'll obviously keep that under review, but certainly at this stage we're positive that over the coming year or so we will be able to undertake that design development, but it is subject to us getting that additional funding from the Scottish Government.
Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. Just before I ask my question, Bailey Kerr has informed me that he's been delayed, but will try and be here as soon as he can. My question was, there is some uncertainty about our receiving this money from the Scottish Government. Could officers go into detail the process that the government will be going through to evaluate if they give this money or not?
Convener, so the process we have had with the Scottish Government, just to give it context, has been one of a collaborative work task force where senior officers across both organisations have broken down the scheme into initial phases. Of those initial phases, we've identified the River Carn as one that has manageable financial commitments that could potentially be taken forward. The initial start of that is that design work that we need, so that if funding does become available of a larger scale, we are well positioned to then progress those projects. All of the phases where any funding is being requested would be subject to their own business case within the wider context of the scheme's business case. So at the current stage that we're at for that first phase and those initial design works, we've been asked to submit a business case to the Scottish Government, and we would be expecting an announcement certainly before the end of the financial year to enable us to go into 26-27, hopefully undertaking those works. And that's what we've identified within the delivery timescales. And when I say those works, that's design works, as that's what we've highlighted in terms of the appendix D in the report, as timescales based on that.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you. I see no further indications for questions. Therefore, I'll go to Councillor Deacon to move the report.
Thank you very much, Kabina. And I want to thank Paul, Alistair, and the entire team involved in writing today's paper and their amazing work they're doing with the Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme. The flood risk management is important for all of our residents, businesses, and visitors. As we all know, the Grangemouth protection is not a new topic for us here, so I won't spend too much time going over the case in detail. However, we recognise that flood events are becoming more frequent. With the current weather trends, and the proposed scheme will provide our communities with greater resilience to avoid the inevitable impacts a flood event would cause. As the support states, we are currently progressing through the scheme notification stage, and we anticipate that the Scottish Government reporter will confirm dates for a local hearing. On conclusion of the hearing process, the proposed scheme will be brought back to the Council Committee for a final decision. This particular paper is about the project team being prepared and ready to move seamlessly into the next project development stage. Officers have identified a sequence of work which allows elements of the wider scheme to be delivered in a manageable and affordable tranches of work. By agreeing to fund the next steps and allowing the more detailed design development necessary to procure the first construction contracts, we can continue to effectively and efficiently progress the river carrying corridor. The Council has already earmarked money from TIF initiative for the Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme project, and it makes sense to continue the positive progress achieved to date. So with this, I welcome and move the recommendations raised in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Deacon. Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Convener. I'll happily formally second Councillor Deacon, and obviously welcome when everything moves forward the River Carn section, which was a big part of the constituency I represent.
Thank you. As there is no amendment, there's no debate, but I will go to group leaders for brief comment. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I just want to commend officers for the approach that they're taking to this, while we all look forward to the day when sufficient monies are forthcoming to undertake the entire flood prevention scheme. I think it makes perfectly good sense to prioritise those parts that are achievable in the meantime. So well done, and thank you for all the hard work that officers have done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bundy, do you have any further comment?
No comment.
Councillor Spears.
Comments. I could have comments regarding this subject all day, but I'll try and cut it short. We watch almost nightly now on our TVs flooding in different parts of the world due to rising sea levels. Grangemouth, the Carn corridor, Falkirk and Bowness are not immune.
Councillor Spears, it's not a political speech. It's to why you've not brought
I'm not
forward
making
an
a political
amendment.
speech.
No,
I'm making a speech that is relevant to everybody that lives in that area.
But there's no.
That might not make you happy.
Councillor Spears, I'm going to remind you of the purpose of comments from group leaders. It's to say why you've not brought forward an amendment. Okay, Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, Convener, and apologies, I'm having a few technical issues this morning, but I think we're here. I have not brought forward an amendment because I don't see a problem with the recommendations in the report. However, I do think that there will be further questions, and it's a very frustrating situation that we have here in terms of not understanding the entirety of the funding. And I do think that there will be questions to be answered given the amount of money that we have spent in designing this scheme overall, and the time and the resources that it's taken, and not having the surety on that. And it's certainly, although the hard work of officers in our council, and I totally acknowledge that, I think it is regrettable and perhaps beyond my understanding as to why we are now in this stage at 2025 and we still have no idea if the entire scheme can be funded. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're happy to agree the report. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 6, and we have a procedural motion which I'll hand over to Mr Moody to explain and to how this process will be facilitated.
Yes, thank you, Convener. And the procedural motion has been circulated in advance. The effect of the motion is that no consideration be given to the master plan at the moment until we know the outcome of the decision under the SPR consideration in relation to the Kinneil Museum. And because that specifically requests that we don't take a decision on the master plan, which is the issue before us, it constitutes a procedural motion. So where there is a procedural motion that is taken ahead of any substantive consideration of the item, the vote is for or against. If the procedural motion succeeds, then that ends consideration of this item for today. If it fails, then we proceed as normal to consider the substantive item. There is an opportunity for questions to officers at this stage, but those should be restricted to the impact of the procedural motion itself, not about the substantive item, because we haven't yet decided as to whether that will be considered today.
Okay, thank you for that. I will go to Councillor Patterson to speak to the procedural motion. Oh, sorry, apologies. Councillor Murtagh?
Yeah, I was just, we got questions first before the procedural motion then?
Yes. Okay, right.
Okay, so I wanted to ask officers then, in terms of procedural motion, what would the impact be of delaying this particular, not hearing and therefore not proceeding with the recommendations in terms of the kind of work that's outlined in the master plan, for example, the funding to the woodland and other projects? What does the impact have of delaying the paper?
Mr McGuinness?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Convener. Probably the single biggest impact here is the ability to progress a number of the projects identified within the master plan, particularly the urban woodland management plan. We have external funding opportunities to deliver against that, and Council has received Pride in Place impact funding, which we would be aligning to our contribution towards that external funding to allow this project to progress. So the position we're in just now is, should this plan not be approved, there's a possibility that we would lose that opportunity to progress that particular project because we wouldn't be able to allocate the Pride in Place impact funding within this particular time frame.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up then? You said in terms of the funding, is it a case of delay to funding, as what you were saying is that there's a potential that funding may not be forthcoming at all, and therefore that those projects would not be able to proceed within the master plan and have to be rethought?
Thank you. Through you, Convener. Yeah, the Pride in Place funding is over a 2-year period, so any delays to this particular approval of the master plan may impact that project not happening and us not having the funding to allow the urban woodland management plan to progress. So there is a potential, should this be delayed further, that may not happen.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand the context of what we're debating. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener. Councillor Murtagh asked the exact question I was just about to ask, and Mr McGuinness for the full answer.
Thank you. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I'm beginning to wonder if I have missed something. I was not aware that a decision had yet been made as regards the Pride in Place funding and which projects would be looked at for that. Could I ask for some clarity about that, please?
Okay, Mr. Benny.
Thank you, Convener. I just want to be clear, there's two elements to the Pride in Place funding. There is the Pride in Place funding, which will go to a single community, and then there is the Pride in Place Impact Fund, which is more within the gift of the council, but has a time-limited money must be spent within 2 years' time. So projects that officers recommend for that funding need to be delivered within that envelope of time. So a delay to the introduction of this master plan means that officers wouldn't have the same level of certainty that the master plan is going to be approved and that this project can be delivered within the time envelope we've got. So I think it is really important that the master plan is approved to allow that to happen. I also think there is an element of an impact being that officers will find a change slightly unclear, since the decision in January was that the strategic property review decision could not progress until the master plan had been completed. And the master plan is now ready for approval. And the suggestion is that we delay the approval of the master plan until we have the decision of the strategic property review. So I think that officers would, find that that implication would be unclear.
I will ask further offline, I think, in terms of the Pride in Place money, because I'm not aware of us having made any decision about what projects are being put forward.
I don't think there has been a final decision made on that, but there are a collection of proposals that would potentially come forward for members. But I'll just, Mr. Benny, do you want to just clarify that?
Yeah, through you, convener. You're absolutely right. No decision has been taken on the projects that will go forward for the Pride in Place funding. And I think to give officers the benefit, we only received the information on this funding in the most recent numbers of weeks. So it's not that we have sat on this, but the next phase, once we submit our proposal for the community to benefit from the community element of the Pride in Place funding, would be to turn our attention to projects that could be put forward for the Pride in Place impact funding. It's my view, and I've made it clear to officers, that I think that this is a very suitable project because it's been already consulted on with the local community and is ready to go. So has a good chance of us actually delivering within that 2-year envelope. And that's why I'm alerting elected members that I think a delay to the master plan would have an impact on how well this project scored, because we would not have the certainty to know that the master plan will be approved and that the projects can progress. But just to be clear, no decision has been taken on what projects will go forward, and that final decision, in my view, would come back for elected members to be approved.
Thank you, convener, for that clarity.
Councillor Spears?
Can I ask what consultation has been taken, if any, has taken place, especially with the Friends of Keneal, who I believe are against this master plan? First question.
Councillor Spears, at the moment we're only having questions in relation to the procedural motion. That's a question that could be asked if the procedural motion falls and we go into the actual debate, because that's in the substance of the actual agenda. I appreciate it's difficult not to stray into those areas at this time, but if we can stick to the procedural motion, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, it's very confusing when you have a master plan that we don't know exactly what's going to be on, as no decisions have been made on projects. I can understand the people, especially the Friends of Keneal, who are more than confused as being asked to adopt a master plan and don't know what's going to go ahead.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, I think that probably does stray more into the substance as well, so probably not appropriate for the officers to come in.
Okay, if there are no more questions in relation to the procedural motion, I'll turn now to Councillor Patterson to speak to that.
Thanks, convener. I will keep this pretty brief because I think it is pretty clear cut. Whilst we do welcome a lot of recommendations in the master plan, you also have to recognise that the closure of Keneal Museum would have a significant impact on any of the long-term planning in the area. The two are entwined and they should be treated as such. And not just Keneal Museum alone. I think there are other issues which have been maybe overlooked in the master plan, such as the Keneal cottages, which I know fall within Mr Gillespie's housing portfolio, but I just think we have an opportunity here to have a real positive impact moving forward and to not act and keep all of these things in mind and pull them all together. We're missing opportunities. I think that I have concerns that some of the concerns in the consultation haven't been addressed. I think it's highly unlikely that, given the argument that the Pride in Place 2-year funding could be lost because we're delaying a matter of weeks, I would argue that that's unlikely to jeopardise that funding. And this is an opportunity. We have a 10-year plan and we're talking about a matter of weeks to delay it. I think it is a very pragmatic approach to delay it until we have better information, more detailed and more ambitious plans for Kimneil. I think it's very possible to radically act in this area and really make an improvement for both the people of Bowness and for the wider public. So I would ask that exec support this today and we are able to then come back and look at it when we have better information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a formal seconder?
Thanks, happy to second the right.
Okay, thank you. We will now go to the vote. I'll turn to Mr Moody and it's for or against, just a reminder for members.
Thank you, Convener. And just to confirm that, yes, it is for or against. For would be in support of the procedural motion, and that would have the effect of ending the discussion on this item today. Against, the procedural motion will fall and we will proceed to consider the item. Councillor Meikle-John. Councillor Bowes.
Against.
Councillor Bundy.
For.
Councillor Deacon.
Against.
Councillor Devine.
Against.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Hannah.
For.
Sheriff Bailey Kerr is online. Doesn't appear to be. Councillor Murtagh.
Against.
Councillor Nimmo.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Redmond.
For.
Councillor Sinclair.
Against.
Councillor Spears.
For.
Committee, there are 6 votes for, there are 7 votes against. The procedural motion falls.
Okay, thank you for that. We now move on to the next phase. We do have a deputation request from Friends of Kinneil. We've got Jane Hogg, who I think is online, and Mr Shearer. Mr Shearer, do you want to come forward? While we are getting set up, can we formally agree to hear the deputation?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Convener. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jane. Between yourself and Mr Shearer, I have 10 minutes. There'll be 10 minutes of questions, and I will be quite strict on the 10 minutes of questions because of the size of today's agenda.
Okay, thank you. My name's Jane Hogg. I'm the Vice Chair of the Friends of Kinneil. Apologies are sent from our Chair, Eileen Jackson, who had to call off at the last minute for personal reasons. With me, as you can see, is Ian Shearer, who's our previous Chair and is on top of the detail relating to this. So I'm going to pass over to him to speak.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you to all of us, to all of you for receiving us today. I'd like to explain why we think you should consider this item very carefully and decide not to endorse the master plan today, but to ask for more work to be done to get it right, then bring it back in the new year. Given the pressure of your agenda, we'll try to quickly cover 3 things. First, extra background and new information to what's in your papers. Secondly, some fundamental ways in which the master plan in front of you needs improved. And thirdly, to suggest some next steps and to emphasise the positive message for all of us of a good outcome today, and which can then be amplified even more in a few weeks' time if the overall plan at Kinneil could be got right. Talking of positive messages, there's been good news and cooperation on the Council's allocation of major Scottish Government funding for Kinneil's Play Park renewal, which we really welcome for completion in the spring, following on from the use of UK funding for car parking and other improvements last year. But Convener, we have to put these to one side of our mind to focus on today's document, which looks at overall wider strategic development for 10 years beyond these. So first, some extra content and information, extra context and information. We were last year in January when the full council agreed to put off for 1 year its decision to close the visitor centre and facilities at Kinneil Museum. The first reason for putting off the decision was to allow the new master planning to get underway. It didn't make sense to close facilities before reviewing what the estate needs for the next decade. It seemed likely that the review and public consultation would clearly show, as they have, that facilities just like the visitor centre at the museum are needed and should be a central element of the plan. Convener, at the end of January's debate, you said that when the strategic property review returns to council next January, the opportunity could be taken at that stage to remove altogether the SPR's threat to close the museum, as Councillor Bundy had recommended, if the work on the master plan provided the evidence to do so. Councillor Hannah said that she hoped to see a master plan which would satisfy all the people of Bowness, including the Friends of Kinneil, that she wanted to see the museum go from strength to strength, and likewise that the closure threat could be looked at again this coming January, given the right progress. And we hope that will be the unanimous recommendation at that time. The second reason that the closure proposal was put off was to allow the council to have more discussions, especially with Historic Scotland, who manage Kinneil House, but also with Museums Galleries Scotland, who have lifeline funding from the Scottish Government, to explore options to save the museum. That way, its visitor centre, including essential toilets, would remain an integral part of the overall attraction, and its facilities, together with the house, would provide a joined-up and solid foundation for the further 10-year strategic development plan. As of today, Convener, those discussions have made some good progress, but haven't yet quite concluded, though an outcome is expected soon. The Council's current public position remains that it is going to close the museum next year, which is, incredibly, the 50th anniversary of its opening by councillors in 1976, as well as the 20th anniversary of the Friends. Our volunteers have tirelessly worked with the Council and Historic Scotland managers since 2006. Separately, an impressive third-party investor, known to some of you, and with encouragement from inside the Council and Historic Scotland, is working up some serious proposals for the centrepiece attraction of all of this, the currently empty main block of Kinneil House. If those proposals emerge more widely, they could soon form the core of a much more inspiring 10-year plan than the one before you. So, as an executive, you don't know today if the estate will keep its visitor centre and museum offer, or more basically have any toilets or where they might be. You also don't know Historic Scotland's or the third party's potentially major wider plans. Yet it's as if you're being asked to endorse a 10-year visitor roadmap whilst blindfolded as you set off and with little idea where the route is leading. The master plan is written on the official basis that the existing museum and toilets are definitely closing, and it says so throughout the text. It speaks much of its main ideas and aims as being around improving visitor facilities and the fantastic heritage offer which attracts people from so far away to come to the Falkirk area. This is also the message of the Council's press statement last week accompanying the plan. But you can't improve a facility if it's already closed. And so there's also no detail on how. An improvement plan and a closure plan clearly just don't stack up together, and it's not credible as a strategy until these things are ironed out. We recognise the amount of work by lead officers in a tight timescale to try to square this circle into running a consultation over summer holidays when schools and families for which Kinneil is so important are away, and then into analysing a flawed electronic survey and trying to shape this draft plan. The facilities people want and need are clear from the results, and the draft plan does capture many of the right issues and themes, but it doesn't yet hang together with solid and coherent commitments. I'll now mention a few other fundamental problems with the plan's actual content. First big question, what is the plan? If you look at the work plan in part 4, its main plan is to come up with another plan at some unspecified time in the future, and we also don't feel the vision statement in the plan is quite right. The woodland plan that has been referred to, surely that is a standalone plan, which we do support and could be adopted and approved separately. We looked at 5 other master plans. 2 were approved just a month ago for historic estates in South Lanarkshire. Third is the Bowness Town Centre Master Plan you looked at here last month. Finally, Kinneil's own 2015 Master Plan, where, by the way, we don't agree that it's been delivered in substantial parts of its objectives. And then we also looked at the new Calendar Park Plan. All of these other ones had at their heart a series of deliverable projects or investment proposals. The 2 South Lanarkshire plans also have total funding attached from their council of 1.35 million in next year's budget. Bowness now hears that this council is working up a budget of an astonishing 7.265 million from its own funds over the next 5 years for an unpublished new Calendar House investment plan, on top of the Town Hall and Arts Centre, and that there's £463,000 for the already modern Helix Visitor Centre next year too. What are the similar specifics for this plan and for investing in the visitor facilities? Talking of the master plan for Bowness Town Centre as a fabulous heritage destination, councillors said last month that it needs joining up with the Kinneil plan and via the railway. We agree, and this should be another reason and focus for more work. Bowness could be branded the Fair Town. The plan has no proper visitor data and hasn't had time to survey the many visitors from outside the area, and it's only surveyed residents. And there's no economic or tourism analysis. The previous feasibility study we told you about last time in January, showing what good visitors figures a good development could deliver, isn't mentioned and is not updated. How will vital learning activities for local children about history, nature, science be delivered, especially in a closed museum? It doesn't say. What events will attract more visitors? Why is there a very long list of council events for families in rural Muravenside on the council's dedicated marketing and social media for that park, and hardly anything like that at Kinneil? In the plan and outlined funding opportunities, couldn't the council be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the museum next year and 20 years of the Friends, as well as the 20th anniversary of the Antonine Wall World Heritage Site, which falls in 2028? And with all the talk in the plan of new visitors, including at the new play park, which we do think looks very good, where will they in fact go to the toilet or get refreshments? It's the most basic public amenity of all for any plan and managed attraction, but as it stands, we don't know. So to wind up, there's a lovely anecdote about how the family at Glamis Castle in Angus, the childhood home of the late Queen Mother, were trying to work out what to do to develop the place. Apparently, the Countess of Strathmore sought some advice from an old retainer there after she had commissioned a lengthy tourism study. He said to her, "Well, I don't know about all those statistics, but what I do know is that the public wants tea and toilets, and in that order." He wasn't wrong, convener, and that's what she did. And frankly, those few words were a sound plan. No amount of gloss and words can hide the actual lack of substance at the heart of this plan. It's surely in all our interest to have the best possible plan and not be lumbered for 10 years with this one. To coin a phrase, a master plan is not just for Christmas, but is supposed to define a decade of development and detailed further work. Conversely, no one is harmed by an extension of time. In the short term, there may be extra work for officers to improve it, but then they'll benefit too from having a more focused plan to work on, rather than going around in circles to talk about the fuzzy bits in the middle of their otherwise good work on this one. We recommend an extension of time to get this right. Among other next steps, the Council's own Kinneil Estate Advisory Group, which hasn't even been convened to discuss the draft plan, should have a chance to do so collectively. And I'm just finishing. In response to Mr. Benny's point about chicken and egg situation, this plan and the museum plan have to be considered together. They are absolutely inseparable, and each one impacts on the other, and decisions need to be taken on the overall picture all at once. So thank you, convener and councillors, for listening, and we're very happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Mr. Shearer. I will now open it up to questions to Friends of Kinneil, but can I ask members to be mindful that I'm strictly limiting it to 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that delivery. We fought a similar battle about 18 years ago, I believe, when they originally wanted to close the visitor centre, and the administration, which was an SNP administration at the time, sought wisdom on it, especially for the Friends of Kinneil, which had newly started, and the centre remained open. You mentioned that there is a plan for another plan. Could you elaborate on what you mean there?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Spears. Within the draft master plan that's before you, there is, as I say, not much substance on investment proposals or concrete commitments. And the section that is entitled Work Plan, which is section 4.1, I believe, if you look at it closely, it is effectively a plan to write another plan at some unspecified point in the future. And we don't think that that is sufficient. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned that the Woodlands plan should be a separate plan.
Well, I think the point of the master plan is to be a vision for the overall estate and its historic attractions as a visitor attraction. That is what the plan is basically about. The Woodland plan is a very worthy project, which is certainly in need of funding, and I believe there are funds available for that. But it is a standalone annex, and I don't think it's appropriate to say that we have to approve the whole document, which is about all the other things and the overall whole, when there could be an option just to say that we agree that the forestry plan should be taken forward as far as possible on its own as a standalone item.
Do you feel the surrounding forests is a help, especially the Kinneil gas plant on carbon capture there?
Obviously, it has significant environmental and sustainability benefits. It's been a much loved part of the estate for a long time. It's also got a lot of history within the woods that is sometimes hidden. And could you repeat the nub of your question, please?
You're next door to one of the most important economically beneficial sites for the UK economy, the Kinneil gas plant.
Yes.
Obviously, there's emissions there, and you feel the proximity of Kinneil Woods is helpful in the.
It is, I suppose, a counter to that, but I don't have the knowledge or the figures to know to what extent it hoovers up the emissions, so to speak.
I would finish by saying, long may the wild garlic grow.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thanks, Convener. And first and foremost, I would just want to say thank you for your passion and your dedication, and to all the Friends of Kinneil, because it shines through. And I think, as we've heard, it comes up time and again over the years about Kinneil, and I think it's passion that's kept it going. Can I ask, in your deputation, you mentioned just very briefly the advisory group, the Kinneil advisory group, and they hadn't actually convened to discuss that. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yes, as you're aware, Councillor Patterson, there was an existing master plan created in 2015. We don't quite agree about the degree to which that's been delivered. We think substantial bits of that have not been delivered. But alongside that, an advisory group was created to oversee and advise, the clues in the name, on the master planning process and the contents of master plans and so on. It has not met since the beginning of this year, and although it was involved in a workshop right at the start of the consultation process to say, well, what did this group want to feed in to the consultation, but it has not had an opportunity collectively to consider the draft plan as a whole, which we think is a serious omission, and we think that if that group was convened, it would have some good thoughts about what has been created, the actual plan that has been created. It includes various representatives of the community, of other groups that are involved at Kinneil, like Sustainable Thinking Scotland, the Railway, the Hill Climb Group, It includes local councillors, it includes the Bowness Community Council and Bownet. So all of these groups are able to come along, but they basically haven't had a chance to discuss this collectively.
I really appreciate that, and it's disappointing to hear. Equally, you on the consultation you discussed that only locals had been included in it, and of course Kinneil has national importance. Do you think how much do you think has been missing from the review by missing that aspect?
Well, as a visitor attraction, obviously, as well as the park side and the environmental side, as a visitor attraction, something as big as that has a commercial element. And if this was a commercial plan, you would do a market analysis, you would survey your customers, you would find out what visitors want, you would assess tourism trends within the local area. That has not been done in this consultation or in the development of this plan. The survey was on Participate Plus, which effectively reaches out to people in the local area. And as I said, that was done during the school holidays. So I think some people may have missed it at that point. 10 years ago, for the previous master plan, an independent feasibility study was done. And I did explain that in January. It showed the opportunity for between 12 and 8,000 visitors a year if the configuration of buildings was got right and if you had the right facilities, with the right attraction at Kinneil, especially if this third-party investor idea comes off, there could be an opportunity for multiply more visitors. But there's no visitor data as far as I'm aware in this plan at the moment, and we think that's a bit of an omission.
Thank you. It is interesting because when you're talking about third-party investments, that's not something that I think has been explored in the report. So it's really encouraging to hear that.
There is a sorry to interrupt you. There is a very brief allusion to it, but we think that it is in progress. Some people in the room are aware of it. It could be quite an exciting vision to complement what's already there, including the museum and wall paintings and James Watts Cottage and all the other stuff that's there. And it would obviously itself be a 10-year vision, and it would be a significantly more inspiring 10-year vision, I would suggest.
Appreciate that. And just finally, you did touch on in your deputation as well, plans about the Kinneil Railway, which obviously the Bowness Railway, which runs very close. Could you just elaborate on that a little more for me?
Thank you. Yes, I'm aware that at your last meeting you had the Bowness Town Centre Master Plan, and one of the big ideas of that was to brand Bowness as a heritage destination. Perhaps it could be called the Fair Town. And it contained some interesting suggestions on how that could be developed. It included the railway, but I think at least 2 or 3 councillors asked about that plan and said, well, how does this connect along the foreshore to Kinneil Estate? And that was a very good question. We think that the two should be integrated. We should make sure that they are joined up. Obviously, you've got a railway as well with tens of thousands of visitors per year going on that railway between the town and a windy platform up near the main railway line. We think there is a seriously missing opportunity to get those visitors off that train and to get them into the attraction, and that would be a much better. We've said that for years. If this area can build a Falkirk wheel or the Kelpies or whatever, then surely technically there may be a solution to getting people off that train and getting them into the historic attraction. We don't know why that couldn't be explored as part of the plan.
Thank you. That's all my questions. Thanks for your insight, Mr. Shearer.
Okay, technically we are at the end of the 10 minutes. I will take Councillor Bundy's question, but I would ask both the question and the answer be very brief.
Thanks, convener. So I'll try and merge the 2 questions together then. On page 72 of the draft of the master plan, it says that one of the common concerns of the key stakeholder workshop report was, and I quote, "The absence of toilets or limited access to them as a common concern," end of quote. So how would Friends of Kinneil feel if a master plan was approved which had no mitigation plan about toilet access to Kinneil over the next 10 years? And more broadly, what would the Friends of Kinneil think about the Council's ambition for Kinneil if this plan was accepted to do?
Thank you, Councillor Bundy. On your first question, rather than hearing from us, the Friends, all the time, maybe the voice of the wider community at Kinneil should be looked at as well. And a lot of people have commented on the new play park. Clearly, the new play park, which was announced on Tuesday, is very popular with local residents, people across the area. And if you read through the many comments on this underneath, a lot of people have said, well, that's great, but where will people go to the toilet? Where will families go? There are already concerns and issues at Kinneil about the lack of toilet facilities at certain times of the day, and about what then happens as a result of that. I don't need to go into the details. So toilet facilities are essential. Clearly, it was a key part of the consultation feedback, and yet the plan as it stands, we don't know what commitment there is to retaining toilet facilities or anything like that. The second part of the question, we think I think I've already explained in my remarks why we think this master plan is not right, and I think it's in all of our interests. I can't see that it's really in anyone's interests in this room to have a plan that isn't right at the moment and needs to be integrated not only with the museum decision, but with other plans such as the Bowness one, LDP3, a local place plan, which is also emerging. All of these things need to be done right and carefully. It's 10 years.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end of the questions. Can I just ask Jane and Ian for the presentations and their contributions to this morning's committee. If you'd like to take your seats, we will now open things up for members' questions to officers.
Thank you, and apologies to Jane that she wasn't able to come in, but I'm sure she would have had some of you. Thank you, convener, and everyone.
I'll go to Councillor Garner first, Councillor Hannah, then Councillor Spears.
Thank you, convener, and it's I'd like to thank Jane and Ian as well for their contribution there. Thank you. It's a question to Mr McGuinness, and it's surrounding, we heard some question there regarding the consultation. In his opinion, is he comfortable that this has been a full consultation with a large uptake and some positive responses?
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I think this is one of the most extensive consultations I've been involved in. We put roadside billboards. We engaged with many different parts of the community to get their views. I'd probably like to bring in Mike Ewart just to give you a bit more detail. There's a detailed report in Appendix 1 which provides information on the consultation, but I might just bring in Mike to give you a bit more flavour for the activities that were involved in the consultation, if you don't mind.
Yeah, welcome, Mike.
Morning, everybody. Thank you, Michael. Yep, I'm very happy to give a bit of an overview of the consultation that took place. So initially, we undertook a review of the existing master plan to understand what has and hasn't been delivered to help inform the process. We then undertook a two-stage process for consultation. So the first stage included an understanding of reaching out to the wider community to understand what they like, don't like, and the kind of changes that they would like to see and improvements that they'd like to see at Kinneil Estate. We also held a range of stakeholder one-to-one meetings, so that included all the members of the Kinneil State Advisory Group, which includes, as Ian mentioned, Friends of Kinneil, Sustainable Thinking Scotland, conservation volunteers, several officers within Falkirk Council, including the Regeneration and Tourism team, the events team, corporate assets and the Ranger team, Historic Environment Scotland, Green Action Trust, and other users of the site as well. We reached out to Bowness Sporting Automobile Club, the Scottish Railway Preservation Society, as well as the local residents. We then had a key stakeholder workshop in March 2025, which brought many of these people together to again look at what the opportunities, the strengths, the weaknesses, and the threats were for the site. That information was all collated to create the draft master plan, which was presented as stage 2 consultation. So that consultation involved was, as Michael referred to there, it was promoted online by social media. There was press releases, billboards, and posters on site, just trying to get the message out as wide as possible for people to engage with it. We held 7 drop-in meetings as well, and also the online survey as well. So the drop-in meetings were an opportunity for people to come and explore and understand the content of the master plan. It's quite a large document. I think sometimes it's difficult to communicate just online what the body of that document involves. So we had the online surveys, so we had reached out to both online through Participate Plus, but also to the under 13s as well who can't use the online survey through the Participate Plus platform. And during that time, we also obviously continued to discuss with members of the Kinneil State Advisory Group the contents of the plan, and that provides a general overview of the process.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Mike and Michael for that. It does sound like it's been and the team, obviously. It does sound like it's been a really thorough process.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I have a couple of questions. First of all, could officers maybe clarify, this is a 10-year master plan, and could officers clarify what the answer is to the issue raised by Mr. Shearer about tea and toilets? 10 years is a long time to hold it.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hannah. And I suppose it's just important to outline to people that the museum itself is open for about 16 hours a week. We can only man it for that period of time. It's not actually, I would designate it as a public toilet. I would designate it as a toilet in the facility that the public have access to. So I think there are a number of elements, and again, I'd like to bring in Mike here, of elements within the master plan, action plan of areas we want to promote and bring forward going forward. But I'd like to maybe bring in Mike to give you more flavour of that, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks again. I think it's first thing to say is that the vast majority of our parks do not have toilet facilities within them. The parks that we do have toilet facilities at are Calendar Park and Muiravenside Country Park and Zetland Park. The model that we adopt there is to provide that through connect to the cafe offering that's at each of those locations. So that's put out to tender, and a private company operates that, and in return what they do is they manage and maintain the toilets. So that reduces the cost implications or burdens for Falkirk Council, and it also means that we can make that provision. At Kinneil Estate, I think there is potential within there to provide some kind of food offer and toilet provisions. It's one model that we could look at to make that happen. I think the key thing that's required there is to drive up the footfall within Kinneil Estate to make that kind of model more feasible, and also, I suppose, first off, to actually gather more accurate information on how many visits we get to the park. Having it is a little bit chicken and egg. Having the play park there the new play park will drive up footfall, but I think it's about what else can we do to encourage that and make that proposition more attractive. Another model may be that we could look at some kind of social. I think STS might be one option where they might be able to run some kind of training program that could potentially mean that an offer could be provided there. And I think this is all tied up with what are the resources within the park. So vacant buildings, how can they be used? And within the master plan, there is an opportunity identified to carry out an options appraisal to look at that and understand clearly what the benefits are, both in terms of revenue generation, but also in terms of the benefits that can be provided. So I'd say the master plan does contain a number of measures within it to look at that in more detail, and I think it's clear to. I think you need to say that obviously we haven't come to that end of the process of looking at Kinneil Museum and what might happen with that. So there's that element as well to look at. But I'm happy to take more questions on that.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other question, which is a procedural question. Mr. Shearer, in his excellent presentation, made reference to delaying the master plan. Now, clearly, Councillor Patterson's amendment to the recommendations was intended to do exactly that, but the democratic decision of this executive has been against that amendment. I wonder if we could have some clarity about the options available in terms of the decision on the master plan in the light of that.
Okay, I'll go to Mr. Moody.
Yes, thank you, Convener. And as Councillor Hannah correctly says, the procedural motion has been rejected, so that option of delaying the master plan is not before you as an executive. So what is before you will be the motion in terms of the recommendations, which is to approve the master plan. If there is not general agreement on that issue, then there is an option for a straight for or against vote in relation to that motion approving the recommendations, but it would be a binary choice of approving the plan or rejecting the plan. And I think it's appropriate as well just to remind members of the rule in your standing orders relating to 6 months for reconsideration if the plan were to be rejected in that context.
Thank you. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I'll quote Mr. Shearer, our speaker from Friends of Kinneil. The master plan, not the right plan. It needs to be done right. We're talking about 10 years for the people of Bowness. As I've always said in Grangemouth, our sister town on the Forth, people of Bowness have felt considerably let down over the last few years. It's time we listened to the people of Bowness. If we vote against this today, it goes back for 6 months. It gives time for further consultation, especially with people who put so much time and effort into Kinneil Estate, and that's the Friends of Bowness.
Councillor Spears, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you. We are not in debate. It's questions to officers, and I've given you a lot of levity, but I'm not going to continue to do that. It's questions only, so I'm going to move on now. You've had your opportunity.
No, I was coming to my question. You butted in.
You finished. I'm going to move on.
No, I'm not finished. I've got my question. I was explaining the reason for the question.
I'm the convener. And if that is my ruling, that's my ruling. I'm going to move on. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Convener, and I'll try to keep this as concise as possible. What would be the impact and the risk to this council not passing this master plan today?
I think for me, the biggest risk is potentially reputation. We've outlined, Mike outlined in particular, the extensive consultation we believe we've carried out in 2 phases with our community. This is very much a community local park for the people of Bo'ness, and we believe we've done an extensive piece of work. And to delay it would just potentially delay the urban woodland management. We've discussed that already. We've also got to recognise that the museum itself is, the decision on the museum is based upon the SPR decisions, and that has until the end of March 2026 to be determined. We are still in discussions with Historic Environment Scotland. There are other parties who may come forward between now and the end of March, so the museum is not closing as yet. The decision by the members was to close the museum by the end of March, but we are still hopeful there could be a solution across our community of Historic Environment Scotland to continue the use of that park. So, I think that's kind of the position we've got. We've done an extensive piece of work we think is a really positive, reflects the needs and aspirations of our community, and reputationally and potentially funding opportunities could well be missed. This plan is not approved today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Binney, you want to come in?
Through you, convener. Thank you. I just wanted to make the point that our parks team is an award-winning team. They have won the Scottish Planning Award for the work that they did in Zetland. They won a COSLA Award for the work that they did at Zetland. They are an exemplar in terms of the management of parks. They have put together a heavily consulted upon master plan, which has the majority of support from the community who've taken part. In addition, the Kinneil Advisory Group, which involves the Historic Environment Scotland, the World Heritage Site, the Inner Forth Landscape Initiative, the White Lady Mountain Bike Group, the Friends of Kinneil, the Community Council, the Scottish Railway Preservation Society, the Bo'ness Hill Climb Revival Group. Every one of those gave support to this proposal other than the Friends of Kinneil. So as an officer, I feel like if this proposal is not supported, then my response will be that it feels like the most significant person or group for us to engage with is the Friends of Kinneil, and that they will be the major influence on the future of the master plan. My view is that the heavily consulted master plan that's in front of you represents the widely favoured way forward, and as officers we seek clarity from elected members on the strategic direction that we're to go in.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm. I have Councillor Murtagh and Councillor Bundy, and I'm going to make a plea again to be brief in your questions.
Do my best, convener. Can I just ask officers, in terms of what was being said about this decision on Kinneil Museum, the decision on Kinneil Museum is that the museum will close. That's a decision of elected members so far, but it isn't closing until March. Is that correct? Although we are going to an SPR paper, but the decision is that it will close as part of the SPR.
That is correct.
Right. I just want to say, so obviously we all hope that that is not the case. I think everybody in this room hopes that that's not the case. However, I'm working very hard to make sure that is not the case. But in terms of the potential proposals that come forward, because the toilets is a huge issue and there's the qualities of Champion, I fully recognise that issue. But in terms of the proposals which may come forward to keep the museum open in some form or another, would any of them be of a likelihood to keep the toilets open or to have a toilet access for full time or specific hours that would kind of coalesce with the sort of park operation? Can you give some information about that?
I may defer to Paul in terms of from an SPR position.
Well, thank you, Convener. In terms of the strategic property review, there has been ongoing dialogue with partners, including HES, and there is a proposal that HES and partners are considering, and we're waiting on the outcome of that decision making. It's unlikely, as is the current circumstance, that the museum would be open all year round, every day of the week, 9 till 5 type situation. But my understanding is that when the building will be open, the access to the toilets, not necessarily public toilets, but public toilets that are accessible to the public will be part of the offering.
Okay. I mean, it is a key issue. I want to ask officers, in their opinion, in terms of whether we approve the master plan or whether we delay the master plan, if we authorise and go ahead with a significant investment, would it make it more likely or less likely that a partnership, whether it's commercial or partly with the community, would be attractive to, for example, extending that sort of offer of opening toilets or looking at those kind of options? Would it be more or less likely, effectively, if we approve this plan?
I think the plan gives certainty to any group who's considering what's going on across the estate, what other investments are going to be made across the estate, what kind of other initiatives and opportunities we're going to look at across the estate. So I think having an approved master plan gives any organisation, potential CAT transfers or Historic Environment Scotland, some certainty on the future direction of the park and the estate. So I think on balance, it would be preferable to have a plan that's approved to give any organisation certainty that taking on the museum would be a wider benefit for them.
Okay, and finally, I just want to ask about the woodland because it's come up in terms of the suggestion about the woodland being a sort of separate plan. Can officers make comment on that, and can I suppose emphasise or give an opinion as to the importance of the woodland in terms of actually being important as a visitor attraction and an integral part of the estate, and why people might want to go?
Yeah, thank you. I certainly believe it's integral to the estate, but I would like to maybe bring in Danny Tallon, who has much more detailed understanding of the urban woodland within the estate. Comment.
Thanks, Michael. Yes, so to answer the question about the urban woodland management plan, it is a document that we require to produce to be able to access funding from the Scottish Government's forestry grant scheme, which is just one of the sources of funding that we're looking to bring together in partnership to deliver our proposals at Kinneil Estate. I guess what we're looking to do with the woodland, it's an old commercial plantation, which is kind of reaching the end of its life. It's become over mature, and it essentially needs to be restructured so that it doesn't fall down. In the last year, we've had to spend £20,000 in tree safety works to clean up after the recent storm. And I guess the older the forest gets, the more that risk increases. So what we're trying to do is reintroduce access to the parts of the woodland which have already been restructured. So the first phase has been done. We're looking to restructure a second phase of that woodland. So take down the timber, use that to cross-fund access improvements to the rest of the estate, and also plant new, more suitable native species, so that in generations to come, Neilwood becomes less of a commercial forestry offer and has much more amenity and recreation value. What we're also trying to do, rather than just deal with the woodland, is take forward an interpretation plan for the estate. So we're looking to bring in funding from other sources. Pride in Place funding has been mentioned. We're also looking to secure funding from Historic Environment Scotland and utilise planning obligations from a nearby development at Crawfield Estate. So whilst the Urban Woodland Management Plan can secure the forestry grant scheme money, It's that wider approval of the master plan that is really needed to give the other external funders the certainty that we have a coherent vision for the estate and that they can invest in the investment we're trying to make, which is both forestry and interpretation on site. I hope that answers your question. Sorry if it was a bit rambling.
Thank you. Thanks,
Okay,
Convener.
thank you for that. First, Councillor Devine, I'm sorry, I moved on kind of quick from yourself. Apologies. Did you want to come back in?
Yeah, Councillor Murtaugh's kind of touched on it, but I was just going to ask about if we go ahead and approve this master plan today, what is the outside benefit to that, i.e. attracting other funding, having shovel-ready projects, and possibly seeking other investment? Are people, are organisations sitting waiting for us to do this in order to be able to tap into that? I just wanted to ask that to see if you can touch upon that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think to a certain degree, Danny explained the financial element to it. Any organisation you go to when you're seeking funding, the first fundamental question they ask is, what's your strategy? How does this fit in with your plans, long-term plans for the community and in the estate and in our town centres as well when we deliver master plans? So I think these are really key documents that set the vision and the ambition of what we want to achieve, and in many cases are quite fundamental to external funders when you're approaching them for funding.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Bundy, then I have a final question from myself before we go to the portfolio holder. Councillor Bundy.
Thanks, Convener. On page 23 of the draft master plan, it says, and I quote, "Provision of facilities such as toilets has been identified as being important to the success of the site." End of quote. This is a master plan. It's a vision. It's not a ready shovel detailed plans for facilities. But yet there's nothing in this master plan that even gives a vision for the provision of toilet facilities, because it simply states, and I quote, "Toilet facilities is not affordable within current allocated resources." So the question that I have for officers is, if toilet provision is being identified as being important to the success of the site, but this master plan has no plans for the provision of such facilities, how can we endorse a master plan which has gaps which would be important to the success of the overall plan?
Thank you, Councillor Bundy. I'd like to draw members' attention to page 23 of the report, which highlights the opportunities to enhance facilities. So again, as you rightly pointed out, we would continue to look at opportunities for appraising what facilities do we need for our community and for our visitors. There's also vacant buildings, page 26, looking at opportunity identified as opportunity number 9. Office appraisal and identifying alternative uses for vacant buildings relevant to the relative benefits to meet the shared master plan vision and potentially generate income streams for reinvestment. Financial sustainability opportunity 10, looking at income streams and again linked to facilities and opportunity, improvements and enhancements of the heritage and the history of the estate, which Councillor Keneal rightly pointed out is very important to the area. And interpretation and education, option 14. So I think within the impacts and opportunities identified within the master plan, we absolutely recognise that as visitors numbers grow, which we hope and anticipate through the work we're doing, there will be opportunities to look at where can we provide additional cafe facilities, toilet facilities, etc. So it's not missing, it's in there. At this point in time, we don't have a solution beyond hoping that someone comes forward and takes on the museum, but there certainly it's been identified and looked at as an opportunity going forward.
I agree that it's mentioned in the master plan, but there's no vision of what that provision would be. So if the master plan acknowledges that the museum is going to close in March, then surely it would be appropriate for the master plan to say, if the museum closes in March, this is our vision for the provision of toilets at the Kinneil Estate. It would cost X amount and we need to attract that external funding. There's nothing like that in the master plan.
I think the master plan, as I said, we actually need to do that exercise. So I think there's a plan within the plan, so to speak. So there is, options we need to consider in terms of what would that look like. We've got there's 2 cottages that are vacant in the estate. There's other opportunities to provide toilet facilities. So I think it's in there, and we do need to consider it. So recognising that fact.
So on that point, the final question is: would you agree that it's quite vague? It's a vague statement for councillors to endorse.
Mr. Benny, do you want to maybe comment on that?
Thank you, convener. My simple point would be to say that if elected members have a concern about ongoing toilet facilities at Kinneil Estate, they simply need to make a decision at the SPR report. There is no need to reject the master plan in front of us simply to resolve the issue of the toilets. The 2 aspects are not interlinked in this case. The master plan before you allows for flexibility with whichever way council ultimately determines on the future of the museum. But it's my hope that there will be alternative partners stepping in to resolve this. We have a very successful track record within the SPR that I hope all elected members recognise, of finding solutions to problems that typically look difficult at the outset. But when we get to those key decision-making points, I feel that people step forward to find collaborative solutions. But just to re-emphasise, there is no reason to reject today's master plan on the basis of whether there is a toilet facility in the park or not.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got a final question before we move to the portfolio holder. It's about some of the comment around the private sector investment and the potential for future private sector investment. My understanding of the master plan is not definitive, and there is opportunities for flexibility depending on what interests come forward. And we would welcome any of that comes forward, whether or not it's already a project within the master plan or not. Could you maybe just clarify around those unmet needs and indeed the potential for the private sector investment that we don't necessarily already know about?
Yes, thank you, convener. Certainly any project we're involved in, particularly parks, etc., we're always exploring various different options, various different partners and collaboration opportunities. Absolutely, if a private sector organisation came forward with some ideas, we would be more than welcome to discuss them in detail. As you know, planning is under my jurisdiction, so that's something we'd very keen to explore, particularly in the estate. Would involve Historic Environment Scotland as the custodians of the house itself. So yeah, we'd be delighted to engage with any private sector organisation who wishes to invest in our communities.
Thank you for that. I'll now go to Councillor Garner.
Thank you, convener, and hopefully we won't get bogged down in one issue here. I'm pleased to bring forward this report and thank officers for their hard work and collaboration in bringing forward the Kinneil Estate Master Plan 2026-2036. This plan sets out a clear, sustainable vision for one of Falkirk's most valued and historic green spaces, ensuring that Kinneil continues to grow as a place where history, nature and community can come together. There are already a number of exciting developments nearing delivery, including a new play park and enhancements through the Hidden Heritage Trail. The master plan provides the framework guiding future investment, improving facilities, attracting new visitors and protecting the estate's unique natural and historic assets for generations to come. One of the most crucial aspects of this ambitious plan is to be financially responsible, focusing very importantly on partnerships, which we have just heard officers talk about in depth. community involvement and external funding to ensure improvements are both achievable and sustainable. Approval of this master plan will strengthen our position when pursuing external funding, as we've heard at length, such as the Forestry Grant Scheme and Pride in Place funding. Any delay to this will severely jeopardise these. This will enable us to turn vision into action and continue delivering real improvements like enhancing visitor information, interpreting the estate's unique heritage and safeguarding Kinneil Wood as a recreational asset for future generations. If anyone here hasn't visited, I would encourage them to do so. It's a lovely place. Approving this master plan means investing in our history, our green spaces and our community. It gives us a clear, sustainable path to improve facilities, attract funding and protect this treasured estate for generations, as I've said. Happy to agree with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I will formally second. There is no amendment, but I therefore will go to the group leaders, and perhaps they would wish to indicate whether or not they are minded to support or not as I go to the group leaders. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I think that we have concerns which we have expressed, but I do not think it's necessary to call for a vote on the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Spears.
Concerns? I think the concerns outweigh the rush, and I think we should listen to the Friends of Kinneil. They're the people on the ground. They're the people who have been lobbying elected members because it's their community.
Therefore, can I just clarify, are you moving the direct negative, Councillor Spears?
I believe the plan needs work. Every plan needs work. And the work should have been done in conjunction with the Friends of Kinneil. Mr. Benny mentioned many organisations. And the only people that move against this plan are the people on the ground. And that's who we are elected to listen.
Councillor Spears, I'm going to ask again, are you moving the direct negative?
I would move the direct negative, but on behalf of the Friends.
Okay. I would have to ask, is there anyone to second that direct negative? No. So therefore, the direct negative falls. Councillor Bundy.
Thanks, Convener. I have many reservations about this, but the arithmetic is quite clear. So for the purpose of time, I'm not going to support the vote just to get the agenda moving.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marta.
I would, well, I'm a bit confused by that. I don't think we should be preempting arithmetic on anything. I did not bring forward an amendment. I did have an amendment and I prepared one and I was considering putting one forward, and in the course of that I spoke with officers across the council to see whether there was a third way that we could look at, because I also have many of the concerns that have been expressed this morning, and particularly around the issue of public toilets and around the issue of the museum. I am 100% passionate about keeping the museum open, as many others are, and doing everything that I absolutely can to help work with others towards that. But I actually think the reason I have not brought forward the amendment, because I don't think it's required, is that approving this plan actually makes that more likely, in my view, and that's my judgment. But that having looked at the evidence, I think that approving this plan, making positive investment and making the case about increasing the visitor numbers at Kinneil, about seeing that positive investment, as Mr McGuinness said, about when we have to go to external funders or when anybody is looking at that investment, that it makes it more likely that we will have that investment if those that are looking to invest can see that there's a clear plan there. I think the issue of toilets is difficult and it is alluded to within the plans we heard in the debate there in the questions. But I think in order to have a chance of that, we need to ensure that we are giving the right message out. And that's why I want to support the plan, because I want to make progress on that, and I want to make progress in investment, and I want to see the Kinneil Museum succeed. So recognise there are a variety of opinions on that, but it is after very careful consideration and discussion with officers that is the way that I think will be best be achieved. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Therefore, there is no disagreement in relation to approving the plan. I'd be happy to agree.
Agree.
Okay, thank you for that. And again, just thanks to Mr. Shearer and Jane for coming along today. Move on to our next item, which is the bereavement strategy. And again, there is an amendment in on this, but we will start with questions to officers first. Apologies, Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Convener. So I've got a couple of questions here for officers. In 5.1.9 of the report, it states that 64% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed with the increasing of fees. Can you please confirm how the public consultation was carried out? That's my first one.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Councillor. All right, through you, Convener. So the public consultation, Councillor Devine, very early on in the development of the strategy, we created a cemetery working group. At that working group, one of the key stakeholders that attended that was one of the equalities leads. So that allowed us to touch base with all different faith groups and make the consultation as inclusive and accessible as we possibly could. Out with this, what we also did was now encourage people when they did sort of attend like our cemetery office. We went through our communications teams and made sure it was shared on all the different social media platforms. And as well as this, we touch base with like funeral directors and registrars where there is sort of frontline facing communication to encourage participation in this consultation.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey, for that. Within 5.27 of the report, it states that the council's costs are only 40% of the average funeral. Can you please provide further explanation and context around that figure and how it's calculated?
Right, through you, Convener. So this is a question, believe it or not, that we had regularly got asked in previous times, but unfortunately we were unable to answer it accurately due to the different variations that's associated with that question. But fortunately for us, there's been intensive research done in recent times by Legal and General, and that sort of has provided information that's now published on what the average cost would be for a cremation and a burial. So as you mentioned there, burial, what we've done there is looked at the makeup of that average cost, and then we've taken out the cost that is aligned to the council delivering that service, and that then has gave us the makeup to come to that just over 40% of the costs.
Thank you. The recommended proposal within the report is to increase the fees by 12.5%. Could you please confirm where this position would put the council nationally in comparison to our current standing?
So regarding positioning within bereavement services, there's three main elements where we benchmark ourselves against, and this is for interments, the purchasing of layers, as well as cremations. So as it stands just now, it is detailed within the report, but I'll cover it for anybody who may not have seen it. So for interments, we're currently the 6th highest nationally. For layer purchasing, we're the 9th highest, and for adult cremation, we're the 9th highest. So with the recommended proposal of the 12.5%, we'd look at interments going from 6th to 5th, layer purchasing going from 9th to 6th, and cremation charges going from 9th to 7th. But it's key to highlight that these projections are based on all other providers only going up by 5%. So to me, these projected positions are a worst case scenario. But even out with that, for me, as the manager of the service now, I don't think we should get too caught up in where we're positioning ourselves, either nationally or locally. For me, it's about addressing the sort of projected additional budget pressures, as well as sort of the capital investment that we require to proceed with the cemetery development that we've highlighted in this strategy.
And one final one for me, Mr. Bailey. Within 7.14, it mentions that the funeral support payment, do you have any indication of the trends in application numbers or approval rates for in the Falkirk area?
Through you, Convener. Unfortunately, regarding local trends, that information isn't visible to us, and there's two reasons for that. The Scottish Government don't publish it in that fashion, if you like, and when the individuals are in receipt of this payment, they will deal directly with the funeral director, so we don't get visibility of that. I can confirm some national statistics in relation to the funeral support payment. So in the last reporting period, which covers 12 months, there was over £9 million in payments provided nationally in Scotland. There was 72% of applicants received this payment, and the average payment to each applicant was £2,065.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for officers? No, no further questions. Okay, in which case I'll go to Councillor Devine as a portfolio holder.
I'll try and keep this brief as well, Convener. Just wanting to thank James and Douglas and the rest of the team for your continued work and for bringing this report forward today. This report has been brought forward and it's the first bereavement strategy that's been put in place to ensure that we can continue to provide burial provision for our communities. This strategy is looking at the long-term financial sustainability of the service by reviewing projected additional costs, both in revenue and capital, and identifying how we can be effectively recovering this through fees and charges structure. This strategy will fit into the Falkirk plan by supporting stronger and healthier communities, ensuring that people are supported through loss and have safe and well-maintained spaces for remembrance. In addition, this strategy will directly support the priority of fostering a green transition through its focuses on sustainable cemetery management. And just to highlight, this is a 10-year strategy, and it's been developed through working groups, through the key stakeholders, through finance, equalities, asset management, legal, planning, bringing together a range of perspectives and expertise to shape this strategy's direction. There has also been a public consultation, which Mr. Bailey has explained, as well as carrying out a full IPA. The reason that this strategy is really important is we need to make sure that we have the correct amount of space to support any burials going forward. I just want to touch on the amendment. We cannot support this full amendment as it would put the strategy at risk. However, we do support further conversations around the provision for dignified funeral and ask officers to explore this further and report back to us. I would urge the executive to support the recommendations set out in the report by officers. And with that, Convener, I'm happy to formally move this report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Garner?
Sorry, happy to say.
Okay, thank you. As there is an amendment, but we'll now go to the Labour Group to move their amendment.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor Devine, for accepting at least a part of the amendment, which I should maybe explain. It is about engaging with funeral directors and getting that discussion going to try to set up an agreed approach to a respectful and affordable funeral, a common approach to that, which could then be put out to the public. At a time of bereavement, people, they really do not need to be going to several different funeral directors for quotes to decide what they're going to do. Their they should be able to grieve in their own way. So I have looked into the East Ayrshire arrangements and make reference to that in the amendment, and it looks to me as if it's a win-win situation. It enables us as a council to be supportive for bereaved people, but it also enables funeral directors and the bereaved to have a degree of certainty. So thank you for accepting that. The other parts of the amendment is about deferring any cost variation until we are setting the budget in March next year. The simple premise behind, we are not opposed to the bereavement strategy as a whole. It is a very useful approach to the giving a degree of sustainability over the long term. But we think that any cost increase should be taken as part of the overall budget debate when it's in the context of all the other things that may be changing in the way of fees and charges, rather than that it should be at this stage.
Okay, thank you. And second?
I'll say.
Okay, I will now open up for debate for any member. Can I, on the back of it, just ask a question of officers in relation to the cost variation? How fundamental is that to the strategy? And by delaying that decision, what would be the impact?
For yourself, Convener, I think that there's a real risk here in deferring the recommendations put in front of elected members this morning. Quite simply, the strategy couldn't progress with as per the fees and charges outlined, particularly in option 3 is very essential to meeting the costs of the £1.5 million investment required for the delivery of the bereavement strategy. Given delegated authority to the director as per option 3 provides us with a certainty, officers with a certainty towards a sustainable charge and the necessary assurity, as I said, in meeting the £1.5 million capital costs. The risk of not delivering on the required capital investment is quite simply that in the very near future we will run out of space. The report itself has identified that we'll reach saturation point within 12.5 years. And I say without that delegated authority as per option 3, that could be a real possibility.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Murtagh?
Yeah, I could see Mr. Moody whispering in your ear, Convener, because obviously I'm a bit confused. I didn't think we were allowed to ask questions at this point in a debate. But that your question was actually the question I would have asked officers. I suppose, having heard that, I'm a bit confused because I do agree in general terms that when we're making decisions on things that it is better if it's a large strategy item that it is done in a budget with balance with other things. I do actually agree with that principle, but I am concerned that what's being asked is that there's a strategy that we all agree on and we want to go forward. And I think the amendment's very welcome in terms of the part that we've all, I think, indicated acceptance to. I wonder whether with this new information that's just been introduced in this debate, whether there would be a third way where part of the amendment could be accepted and maybe the form of words around the situation and budget could be changed, and whether the groups could get together to come to some sort of compromise on that, because it does seem that this is a new piece of information that's been introduced into this part of the debate.
I'm reluctant to accept recesses, but if we have a recess just now, it could act as your comfort break if people wish to have maximum of 10 minutes to have a quick discussion on that. But I'm open to that if people would wish that to happen, or whether people are content with what's there just now. I'm not entirely sure it's new information, but Councillor Murtagh, because it actually was in the report. But I appreciate that maybe having asked the question and it's been brought to the fore. Councillor Hannah.
Can I just clarify, because what Councillor Murtagh has said has slightly confused me. My understanding is that point 3 in the amendment is already accepted by the administration.
Yes,
that's fine.
Yes, the East Ayrshire model, yes.
Therefore, the only question that still stands is whether the decision is made now in relation to the cost increase or at budget time.
Yeah. Councillor Murtagh, is that your understanding?
Well, yeah, I suppose that having heard the answers so from Mr. Gardner there, whether there be a further opportunity for compromise between the two groups or whether they're sticking to that, because I do think that having asked a question in the middle of the debate where therefore there is no further opportunity to, you know, kind of, I just felt perhaps it would be helpful if the groups want to stick to their positions on that's fine. I just think there could be a pragmatic third way forward that avoids having to put that to the vote. But I'll leave that in your hands, convener.
Okay, thank you. I think Mr. Binney wants to come in.
Thank you, convener. And I just wanted to make a point if you were going to take a break, which was, it's my view that the proposal we have here today is a kind of self-sustaining model within the bereavement services. So if a decision is taken today which agrees the strategy but not the fees, then in effect the strategy cannot progress, because the strategy can only progress with the fees to support the investment in the capital. The secondary point is that the strategy is a long-term strategy, a long-term proposal for fees. So even if you delay the decision on the fees for 26-27 to the budget meeting, it wouldn't be at that meeting, as I understand, that you would set the 3-year, approach to fees and charges. So if I was only to receive 1 year of fees guidance, that wouldn't give officers the ability to source the capital funding which is required over the lifespan, because that amount of fees in that first year wouldn't cover off the 1.5 million investment that we're talking about, as well as all the costs. So I just wanted to make that point before you go for the break so that everyone's informed.
Currently, at the moment, we have the strategy and the agreement around the fees with the addendum around the East Ayrshire with the administration. Labour Group are moving the deferral of the fees. There isn't a third route at the moment, and I'm not seeing what that would be. So I'm in members' hands if they want to take 5 minutes to think about it, or alternatively we just continue with the debate to the decision. Councillor Garner.
Take 5 minutes.
Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah, I mean, convener, much as I would welcome a short comfort break, the information that was provided by Mr. Gardner just moments ago is contained within points 7.5 to 7.10 in the report about risk. I don't think I contend the point that it's new information. The information's there in front of members to consider within the report and has been for the last 10 days. So while the question provided that opportunity for the information to be out there in the public within this session, that information has already been in front of us. So while a comfort break would be welcome, that's the point I want to make.
Okay, I'm in people's hands. Councillor Hannah, do you want a 5-minute comfort break in which people can, or do you just want to go to the vote?
Given that people are saying that they would welcome a comfort break, can I suggest we just have one rather than debating it?
Okay, I can see the eyes are perhaps watering. Okay, we'll take it. Well, no more than 5 minutes, please. Colleagues, can we come back into session, please? Thank you. There doesn't appear to be a clear sort of third route forward, so I think we have a clear amendment from to the motion from the Labour group. So unless there is MD who wishes to contribute to the debate, Councillor Redmond.
Oh, cheers. I was just wanting to say a wee bit what our concerns and why we want to go the way we did with the budget setting process rather than option 3. We're already the sixth highest for adult interments in the whole of Scotland, climbing fast up with cremation fees. I agree, we do need to be mindful that we need to expand our cemeteries. There's a lot of investment needed, but some of these rises in here are really big, and a lot of our constituents might struggle to pay them. So I think we have to be mindful of that as well. And I think as well, the delegating going forward to the Director of Police Services to set the budget, to set the increases rather than councillors. It's always been set by councillors. That gives democratic accountability, and it gives a democratic accountability. So by taking that away, that might upset our constituents, because I think our constituents are right to expect democratic control and accountability. I think if we handed it over straight to making these operational, there's a risk that we could see ourselves climbing the league table higher and higher and higher. So that's why I think it's good to have more democratic accountability and control, and why I seconded the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Murtagh.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hope there might have been a third way, but I think what I'm concerned about is that from an overall equalities perspective in the way that we set fees and charges, that we do that on the basis of a cumulative impact at the time, and perhaps actually we maybe should be looking at setting more than 1 year and ahead, and that's something which could be looked at budget and debated. So I am concerned to hear officers say that they feel like if we don't agree this particular part of the plan, that will threaten the overall plan. So I find the decision difficult on that. But I think that from a consistency in terms of looking at how we make decisions, as Councillor Edmund was saying, in terms of the cumulative process, I would worry then that would be taken away in the scrutiny of that situation, where we were looking at the overall setting of fees and charges in conjunction with everything else would be threatened, and that would concern me as equalities officer. And I'm not convinced that at this stage that is the direction to go. So it is a difficult decision. I don't like abstaining on things in general, but I do think that has to be considered within the mix of this decision, and I'm not sure that it fully bears out in the report. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Garner.
Thank you. It's my understanding that the service or the council officers still look after sport and leisure charges for interest. That's kind of in their given. I think there is another one. I think it's maybe surrounding parking fees. But could Mr. Benny possibly give us some indication if there's any issues with that? And do we, as elected members, still have recourse to come back to you?
Through you, Convener, yes, just to confirm, delegated authority is already given to me to set fees and charges within the Sport and Leisure Service. And that has been the case for, I feel like it's 3 budget cycles. And to date, I'm not aware of any situation where a fee or charge has been set at a level which has caused elected members such concern that it has been challenged. But the fees and charges that would be set would be published within the budget guidance that comes out on an annual basis. And as ever, well, I defer to Mr. Moody, but my understanding would be that council would always have the ability, if it so wished, to change that at budget time if they wish. The purpose of what is in the strategy is to set out a strategic ambition, which we will work with, and a general agreement upon principles. So I wouldn't be setting any fee that deviated from the criteria that's outlined within the strategy. And you can see with the recommended option 3, it's actually got a lower gearing to it in its first year because of that reassurance that this matter would be delegated and able to be delivered with a certain level of confidence.
Thank you. Just to confirm, Mr. Moody, that there would be the opportunity for members to make comment or take a different decision at the budget.
I think we're probably talking about two different things here. So firstly, if there's a decision to agree option 3, as I understand it, that fixes the agreement for this forthcoming year, the fees for this forthcoming year. There wouldn't be an opportunity to change that in the budget because that would be a decision which is already made. I think Mr. Benny is referring to any officers' delegated decisions made subsequently, if those were reported for information to members in the revenue budget process. Yes, there would be an opportunity for those to change.
Yeah, just quickly, thank you.
Can I make sure it's not a question?
No,
please.
It's just following up on this. It's just a point of information. It's not the parking charges. The EV charging was the other one that's been delegated powers, I think.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Devine to sum up.
Thank you, convener. Again, I'll just keep this brief. We've heard from officers today within this report about the significant risk in not approving this strategy with the financials to give that assurance going forward. And I just worry if we don't pass this with the financials today, that we risk going back to the kind of old way the council used to do business, is by just kicking the can down the road and dealing with it later on. And that's not really a risk that I'm willing to take. So I would urge all members to vote for the recommendations in this report. Thanks, convener.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to the vote. Mr. Moody.
Thank you, convener. And the motion is moved by Councillor Devine and seconded by Councillor Garner. And it consists of the recommendations at paragraph 2 in the report with the addition of point 3 of the Labour Group amendment, against which there is the amendment moved by Councillor Hannah and seconded by Councillor Redmond. As point 3 of that has been adopted by the administration motion, the principal issue relates to the question of deferring the agreement on the fee setting to the budget making process. Councillor Meikle-John. Councillor Bowes.
Motion.
Councillor Bundy.
Motion.
Councillor Deacon.
Motion.
Councillor Devine.
Motion.
Councillor Garner.
The motion.
Councillor Hannah.
Amendment.
Bailey Kerr.
The motion.
Councillor Murtagh.
Abstain.
Councillor Nimmo.
Amendment.
Councillor Patterson.
Amendment.
Councillor Redmond.
Amendment.
Councillor Sinclair.
The motion.
And Councillor Spears.
Motion.
There are 9 votes for the motion. There are 4 votes for the amendment. There was 1 abstention. The motion is carried.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. I will remind you that the length of this time that this section of our agenda will take is what keeps you from your lunch. So we will try and move things along as swiftly but appropriately as we can. Next item is in relation to the climate change update, and I will open this up for questions to officers. Councillor Deacon.
Thank you very much, Convener. And I've already indicated to Paul and Claire about these questions. So first question I want to ask is regarding the impact of the SPR and how that's the emissions from scope 1 and 2 are now getting moved to scope 3. And are we doing anything to assist on these to bring the carbon footprint down a bit?
Okay, I don't know, Mr. Kettrick, do you want to take that or do you want to pass it to Claire?
I will pass that to Claire, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Claire, welcome.
Thank you, Convener. So the impact, first of all, on the SPR emissions have significantly reduced scope 1 and 2 emissions for the council. So we've estimated that phase 2 and 3, just over 1,200 tonnes of CO2e, which represents about 8% of our 24-25 emissions. So this is pretty significant. Now, we recognise that albeit these emissions were the responsibility of the council, through the community asset transfer of these buildings, they now are falling into the community's responsibility, and therefore these emissions exist area-wide. So what we are looking at is a system where we work with community organisations, where we can support them to access available funding that wouldn't be available to the council, but because a community group's taken over the building, that might be open to them. So we're looking at how we support those community groups, and Bonnybridge is a key example of how we've accessed funding through Scottish Power Energy Networks to support this building become more financially sustainable because they're using less energy and also reducing their emissions as well.
Thank you very much. Second question is, there was an article in the Fogg Herald last week about rogue traders going around properties. Regarding Eco4 and GBIS, what can residents do if they are worried in regards to this?
Thank you, Convener. I'll take this one. We have 10 approved installers, I understand, for Eco4 and GBIS Flex, and only these installers have the authority on our behalf as part of the programme. Council and these companies will never knock on any resident's door, and that's a message that we've been consistently promoting. They also won't call you out the blue offering to be part of the programme. Both Advice Direct Scotland, the Citizens Advice Bureau and Police Scotland have good information on avoiding these types of scams. And if you think the message we would give, if anybody does have someone come and knock their door, check. That's the key thing, is to check. And if you do feel that you've been a victim of a scam, then please contact Police Scotland on 101 or Advice Direct Scotland. There's also a lot of information on our website which we are promoting. But we would certainly urge anyone who is contacted by phone or by chap at the door to think very carefully.
Thank you very much. And my final question are there any projects that we are looking at going forward to help bring bigger carbon emissions down?
Thank you, Convener. We have the vehicle replacement programme, which is replacing our diesel fleet with and petrol cars and vans with electric. We're using the hydrogenated vegetable oil in our heavy fleet, such as refuse trucks, and that replaces diesel. We have the NDEF programme, which is the Non-Domestic Energy Efficiency Framework, solar PVs, LEDs, air source heat pumps, building management systems, which we're applying across the whole of our estate on a priority basis from our big buildings and working our way down. That not only reduces energy consumption, but it also reduces our costs and our emissions. And we have a huge programme of solar panels as part of that, including 7 high schools that we'll be doing in the next year, including the PPP ones, which we brought back. We have a project register that we're working our way through on a whole range of planned improvements, which will help our climate change activities. And we do actually publish those on our website. And we also have our climate emergency action plan, which is due to come to council in January. council exec in January, which again will provide another update on what we're up to.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, convener. And thank you for this report. But I wondered if you could say a little more about paragraph 6.12 in the report. You make reference to Scottish Government funding for supporting heat decarbonisation projects within the public sector. And you make reference to the fact that we've been unable to apply. Is that for the past 2 years that we have been unable to apply because we had nothing in the pipeline?
Convener, I'll ask Claire to come in on that one.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's a good question. So the first year we did submit an application to this. However, it was felt that it wasn't a fully mature application on the basis of the requirements of the fund. The parameters of the fund changed for the second year, so that was last year. They brought it out at it was kind of fairly short notice for local authorities to apply. So it was mainly where local authorities did already have a project that was identified and almost going through those procurement stages. So obviously we weren't quite ready at that stage. We didn't have a shovel-ready project. It's why we are looking at our buildings just now, reviewing those highest consumption buildings, look at what measures are possible in that, prioritise expenditure to those buildings so that then and we fully expect this funding to be available next year, that we can then say, right, this building or this group of buildings is going to be suitable for that fund, and we position ourselves fully for that fund when it opens.
Thank you. That covers my second question, which was how confident are we that we will have shovel-ready projects and that we will not miss out in the future? But that's already been answered.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Redmond.
Thanks. So we declared a climate emergency and set a 2030 net zero target. That's now been pushed back to 2038. So could you talk about why this has happened? What went wrong over the last few years? It means we're now 8 years behind where we said we would be.
I'll pick up this one, convener. Short and simple answer is everybody in the public sector is in a very similar situation. Comes down to 2 or 3 main areas. One is funding to deliver projects, funding to deliver that transformation. Second part is the wider network of energy in terms of how it's supplied and how it's delivered to us as end users, whether that's through gas or the electricity network. It hasn't all been greened for us to basically benefit from that wider national investment. And the third part is really down to the actual technicalities of how much you can reduce from what are fairly old buildings. We've made huge strides in our fleet. We've made huge strides in our waste, our property assets, which is the main other emitter, clearly, has one that over the number of years has been challenging through our lack of investment in more modern boilers, insulation, and the general age of the estate. And through things like the SPR, you've now started to see, particularly in the last 18 months to 2 years, much greater focus on those areas where we can start to make a difference. In terms of what colleagues have outlined, that is based on our current investment proposals to achieve a net zero by 2038. I would also highlight that a lot of the factors we have governed externally, because of what we have in terms of, the area that we live in, huge emissions are going on, the nature of the networks round about our area. So that is all, as a consequence, leads to us putting those deadlines back. And the deadlines actually are still really ambitious in comparison to where we are nationally.
Thanks. It's a complex picture then. My second question was, the Scottish Government declared a climate emergency and they set a legally binding target of 2030. Talked big about urgent action, and then they dropped the target when it became clear that it wouldn't be met. So how can the public or this council have confidence in a national approach that sets bold targets and then quietly walks away from them?
Convener, I won't be drawn into the politics on it. I'll continue to concentrate on Falkirk Council and what we are doing. What I would say, we'll be interested to see what comes out of the Scottish Government's climate plan, which is due to be published today, and we'll reflect on that when we come and report back in January. What I would say is that we have a hugely ambitious programme in terms of energy efficiency and reductions in carbon, and also in terms of sequestration through tree planting and things that we're doing. So I'm pretty confident that if we continue to progress in the way we are, we can reach our targets that we've now that we've now revised in the future, subject to a fair wind and everything remaining as is.
Thanks. Second last question was, most of our remaining emissions come from buildings and gas heating. So areas we can't decarbonise without proper national backing. Has the Scottish Government provided much funding and legislation and a clear direction for councils to meet the targets? And if not, how are we supposed to deliver on the commitments that are set?
Again, convener, I won't be drawn into the potential politics of it. What I would say is that the Scottish Government have set, particularly through things like their Learning Estate Investment programme, fairly challenging benchmarks that we have to achieve when we deliver new buildings. Now, we only have our first project coming up at Carron Grange. I think it's 67 kilowatts per hour per metre squared that we need to achieve, something like that. And that's a really ambitious target for any building, particularly an ASN. And there is funding that is linked to that, so there is support there. In terms of the wider funding and achieving our targets, you'll see as we've identified in the report, we will continue to progress in line with national guidance wherever we can. We'll continue to promote our own projects and progress them to achieve what we've set out in the report. Could we always ask for more money? I would love to have more money, but I think that's just something that the whole of the public sector and indeed the national governments have to recognise it as challenging.
And then my final question, so if the Scottish Government's net zero target is now 2045, then why are we picking 2038? Would it not make sense to align with the national targets, a bit like what you were saying there?
Convener, I would also say that, as I've probably mentioned a number of times, we are hugely ambitious with the programme of change that we have. We went from a position a couple of years ago where our focus was very much on strategy, policy development, putting the building blocks in place. We are now very much focused in on energy efficiency, replacing our estate, modernising our estate and making better use of our estate, all of which we hope, and certainly our estimates and our projections are, is that we can achieve that 2038 figure. We also have our target is on scope 1 and 2. The wider targets will remain 2045.
Thank you.
Claire could maybe provide more detail on that national agenda.
Yes, happy. Thank you, convener. Happy to come in on the national point. So as Paul said, our target and that shift to 2038, that's on our scope 1 and 2 emissions only. So that only focuses on building energy, electricity for street lighting and our fleet fuel. Whereas we also report on all of our emissions, which includes bringing in scope 3, so our waste management, water consumption, business mileage, home working. So that national position of net zero by 2045, which was set previously following the climate emergency declaration in 2019, that remains a focus for us. It's a statutory target, so we will have to cover that on all of our emission scopes, and not just Falkirk Council's own carbon footprint. We will be focusing on area-wide as well, and as mentioned in our climate change strategy as well, that ultimate national target is the focus for all emission scopes for Falkirk Council, and those exist area-wide.
Thanks, I really appreciate the answers and all the hard work officers have put into this, and got a lot of ambition, but it'd be good to see the results coming forward.
Okay, Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I have 3 questions. I'll try and get them down to 2. As regarding the wider emissions from the district, which I believe we have an input into, when were these statistics taken? Are they 2 years old, or are they recent statistics?
Thank you, convener. I'll let Claire come in on the background to the statistics.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. The statistics come from the regional statistics from the Department of Energy and Energy Security and Net Zero, so they're UK government statistics. So it's very high level estimates of what happens area wide in all local authorities across the UK. So these figures are 2 years in arrears. So the latest position we have is from 2023, and the statistics are included in the report in terms of the progress that we're making. So it's an 11% reduction in emissions from the 2022 position, but yes, they are 2 years in arrears. So we won't know the current position of 25 until 2027.
So do you believe there'll be a greater reduction with the closure of the refining capacity in Grangemouth?
Yes, we will. We'll potentially see that, not from the 25 statistics, but the 2026 statistics that come out. So that'll be 2028. And yes, I fully expect that to have reduced the industry portion of those emissions.
Okay, my next question is, we need to look at what's already happening, know what we're doing to try and improve the situation. Do you have any figures regarding the rise in the water table and the seawater rise figures?
Convener, I think as we highlighted in the earlier discussion on Grangemouth's flood protection scheme, we can certainly provide more detailed data on that. There is a number of models that are used across, whether it's SEPA, their own flood protection scheme, and indeed Claire in terms of our climate change team, all of which have different baselines, have different methods of working on them. We'd be happy to provide Councillor Spears with further details on those.
Well, statistics are statistics, and what we're looking at here is what we're doing to try and stop the rise in the water table, and obviously net zero will hopefully halt the rise in the sea levels. So it'll be interesting to know the figures. But I'll leave that with you, Mr. Kettrick. Thank you. Can I ask regarding the Falkirk councils? So these figures have not been taken after the asset transfers. You know, we're going to get better figures of lost a lot of our properties. So if we wait then to 2006, 2007 to find out if they've improved, and will that be because of asset transfer?
Convener, as Claire, I think, answered in the first question, there's just over 1,200 tonnes of CO2 associated with phase 2 and phase 3 asset SPR programme, which includes a number of asset transfers. That's about 8% of our overall building emissions. The wider target for the SPR was about 14%, and we're still on track to deliver that. Just to give you an idea, Sealock, Denny, Abbotsford, Falkirk Town Hall municipal buildings, they saved over 225 tonnes alone, and that's again factored into our carbon footprint. So certainly there will be a dramatic change in our building emissions, certainly as we go forward into phase 3, phase 4 of the SPR.
Okay, thank you for that. If there are no other questions, I'll go to Councillor Deacon.
Thank you very much. And firstly, I want to thank Paul, Charlotte, Claire, and the entire climate change team for this report. I also want to thank every single member of Falkirk Council, because this is a really good newspaper today. Climate change is at the heart of our lives. It's one we are seeing daily with the challenging and unpredictable weather, the flooding, and even uncommon heat waves for Scotland. The paper overall is a good news story. How much we have done to offset our carbon footprint: 21% reduction in the previous year, and a 61% reduction in total from when we first started reporting 12 years ago. Our waste has seen a 98% carbon footprint reduction, as it no longer goes to landfill. Our fleet is transitioning to a green fleet, with HVO being used in heavy vehicles, LEDs, solar panels, and air source heat pumps being installed in our council estate. The 75% target was set by Scottish Government as an interim carbon reduction target through the Emission Reduction Target Scotland Act of 2019. We are one of the only, if not the only, local authority to have met this target, and at that 5 years before the 2030 date set. We are also on track to meet the Scottish Government statutory 2045 net zero target. Furthermore, our organisational targets multi change moving from 2030 to 2038. Falkirk Council remains committed to tackling climate change, and we will continue to progress with actions that drive our emissions down and also help support our communities. As you can see in this paper, there is still work to be done, and we have heard from the officers on what is being done to meet this new target. The Eco4 and GBIS is doing an amazing job, and it's exciting to see figures double, and hopefully we continue to see these numbers rise as residents get in touch and we can get even more of our residents onto this amazing programme. As mentioned in the report, our green fleet is expanding. At this time, 42% of our fleet is green, and we are awaiting another delivery of new vehicles to further improve this within the next few months. At the moment, roughly 200 of our fleet is green, and this is going to expand within the next few months as well. With a new local authority first, we are also having the first 4.2 tonne vehicle capable of towing. No other council has this. So we as a council have meeting our revised target and to modernise our fleet. So with this, I happily move this report and its recommendations and apologise for getting lost.
Okay, Councillor Devine.
Happy to second.
Thank you. There is no amendment, therefore no debate, but opportunity for group leaders. I'll go to Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I just want to say a major thank you to all the officers who have contributed to this. The achievements that have been made in terms of reducing carbon emissions are obviously welcome, but it's disappointing that we are having to extend the deadline. However, I think it's certainly not due to a lack of ambition on the part of our officers. So thank you for this.
Thank you. Hayley Kerr.
Thanks, Convener.
Thank you.
With regards to Scope 1, Scope 2, the Council is trying very hard to reach their targets. However, without financial help from any governments in the past, we will only reach Scope 3. So I'm just hoping that everybody who's involved in giving the money out and are serious about climate change, they need to cough up. And hopefully in the years to come that the money will be available, because we're sitting with our hands tied behind our back trying to do as much as we can. So I'm just hoping that funding from whoever comes forward. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Spears.
Very, very interesting report we've had today. A report that isn't just Falkirk Council needs to look at, it's each and every one of us. And if every one of us was to take even small steps towards reduction, then the overall effect would be much better. So I hope these reports continue to flow and we get more up-to-date information. Then we can reflect back to our constituents exactly what improvements have been made. I'm sure they'll know the cleaner air, less smells, stuff like that. But just to keep continually saying it's somebody else's responsibility, whether the Scottish Government, Westminster Government or Falkirk Council, isn't the answer. It's each and every one of us responsibility.
Okay, Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, Convener, and absolutely echo Councillor Spears' comments there. And I think it absolutely incumbent on each and every one of us, both personally as individuals, but also as elected members at whatever level, to be making whatever contribution we can to this. I do want to thank Claire and other officers for, I think, not one but two briefings, lunch and learns, to really be able to get to grips with what's happening within the departments. And I think that the work that's going on is excellent and clearly shows the passion and commitment of the whole team, and that really came across in our briefings. I do have to say that while I agree with what others have said, I think that in terms of it being everyone's responsibility, I think that we all have to remember that when it comes to decision-making time, and that unfortunately, if we're going to start playing party politics at any level about this, we're going to detract from the overall issue, which is that every single one of us has got to make really challenging decisions and make the case to the public about why we have to make those challenging decisions, or else more targets are going to be missed, and we need to take the responsibility of that in taking it forward to the public as well.
Okay, are we happy to agree?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Item 9 is houses and multiple occupation. This was on the back of a motion that went to council, and this is the report that's come back. I will open it up firstly for questions to officers.
Just a quick one.
Bailey Kett.
Thanks, convener. So HMOs, the report tells you exactly where they are and how many there is. Is there a way to get around calling them HMOs, as in hotels, and different guest houses? Or is it, I don't know who's got the answer.
And maybe go to Mr. Moody.
I suppose that question arises in relation to what engages either the licensing regime or potentially the scope for an over-provision policy under the town and country planning legislation. And for both of those, it has to fall within the definition of a house of multiple occupation. And that definition is set out in the statute, in particular for the licensing provisions. It's clear, and the question is simply a factual one of does it fall within the definition or not. So the definition is set out within the report, and it's just a question of whether the premises in question fall within it or not. In general, guest houses and hotels won't fall within it.
Thank you for your answer, Mr.
Okay, any further questions? We've got Councillor Spears and Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. I'm just looking at page 303, the list where the amount of HMOs are in Scotland. It reads like a poverty map of Scotland. My concern with HMOs, and I think we need them because of the poverty we are experiencing, is HMOs are mainly filled with people who can't get housing. And what we need to do is to make sure that we don't put all the HMOs in one area and change the character of that area. I.e. town centres. Can I have your question? Yeah, the question is, how do we diversify the areas in which HMOs are there? Because let's be of the reality, they're desperately needed. And do we need to make sure that we don't amalgamate them all in the one area and change the character of that area, which causes a great deal of public unrest?
Okay, I've got Mr. Gillespie's on the call. Mr. Kenny.
Yeah, thank you very much, convener. I'd probably have a slightly different opinion from the local member there, saying that our HMOs are quite diverse. We don't just use them for people needing homeless or housing or anything. They're used for multiple different reasons. And if you look at the previous report, the split across the local authority, in the main there is some obviously areas that are more heavily populated others, but it's very much to when opportunities come up or when individuals go for a licence. They are vital for different reasons in different areas and in different places, but I'm more than comfortable to how we are proceeding with our HMOs and how it supports our local housing strategy, convener.
Thank you. I'm going to bring in Mr. Moody as well.
I think it's probably just worth making the point as well, convener, that HMOs aren't primarily a housing source for people in poverty. They're broadly used by students in cities and towns with universities and colleges, and also by younger workers at the early stage of their working life, where they might not be able to afford to rent a flat of their own. So I think it's important just to recognise that in the broad division of HMOs across the country, that's the broader use of them.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thanks, Convener. My question's actually been touched upon just in that last question, and the answer's there. Because with your indulgence, I know that we've had a lot of briefings and been really well informed on what the purpose of HMOs are, but there is still a lot of misconceptions about them. So I wonder if we could just publicly discuss some of the uses, like that of students, like that of workers in industrialised areas, but what other services rely on HMOs?
Mr. Gillespie, you want to just maybe comment on that?
Thanks, Convener. And I think Colin has covered most of them. They're also used in some areas, HMOs, in regards to support. We have a lot of support. They're used also by our NHS as well, services to support employment in the main for HMOs. But Colin covered most of the main areas that HMOs are used across the country.
Appreciate that, Mr. Gillespie. Thank you.
Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, Convener. And again, looking at page 300 and the details within the report in terms of how many HMOs we have in different areas, it says in point, I think 5.5 that, or 5.4, that since 2010, we've only had 15 applications for a change of use to an HMO. But the public perception out there seems to be different. And I want to ask officers, why, given that we are having a report which reports effectively a low incidence of HMOs and a low base in the league table, if you like, nationally in terms of that, why do we think that there is public consternation about this issue? Because we hear about it a lot from our constituents. Can you give any reason for that?
I don't know if any one person can answer that, because it's a bit speculation about why people think that. I don't know if there's an evidence base, but maybe Mr. Gillespie, I don't know if you can give comment on that.
I'm not so sure there is any evidence base on it. There may be some opinions going about because of the present climate, but other than that, I'm not aware of any reason why, except that there is a belief that maybe HMOs are for a lot of people who are in homeless or poverty, but I think we've already cleared that that's not the reason it is, and does have a detrimental impact onto that area and community. Convener.
Okay. That's helpful. I think the fact that we know there's no evidence base for this, I suppose maybe my question is really to the Chief Executive, given some of the context was mentioned there, that do we think that this is part of our democratic and moral duty as elected members to ensure that misinformation and facts are actually put out into the public domain in a transparent fashion, so that we can be clear about what the issues are on issues like HMOs, etc.
Thank you, Convener. Councillor Murtagh, I mean, I think that to pick up on Mr. Gillespie's point, the concern around about HMOs, as far as we can tell, is probably linked to broader concerns in our communities at the current time, which we're all very aware of. In the context of these concerns, then the Council's role in setting out clear communications and challenging misinformation, all of these things, I think, become very important. We recognise that importance. As I think members are aware, I chair a group particularly considering issues round about the Cladden Hotel. There is a subgroup looking at issues round about communications and community cohesion. So we are very clear about the importance of that. I think HMOs, the concerns around about HMOs may relate to that, but as we can see from the data and numbers in the report, it's not a significant issue in terms of numbers in Falkirk at the current time.
Thank you. And I'm not suggesting that it's entirely connected to that, just to be clear. I just think it's a very important point to make in the current context. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see no further indications of questions. I will therefore go to Councillor Garner to move the report.
Thank you, Convener. This report before us is in response to a motion brought forward by Labour Councillor Alan Nimmo, requesting officers to look at the situation with regards to houses in multiple occupation in the council area and to examine whether there are issues with over-concentration of HMOs in any specific community in the area. The aim of this, I assume, was to identify if any might require a policy response. The report outlines the legislative and policy background to HMOs, control over which involves both planning and licensing. There are some negative connotations surrounding HMOs currently, which completely ignore the positive aspects of HMOs as an important part of the housing supply utilised by both the council and the NHS providing supported accommodation. Granted, there are some negative effects which can arise where over-concentration of HMOs occurs and where a suitable planning policy and parallel licence of provision policy might be justified. In 5.1 of the report, it confirms that the number of HMOs in the area is low, with just 28 current licences, most of which are held by Falkirk Council and NHS Forth Valley, and provide supported accommodation, as I've already stated. It also indicates that the number of HMOs has generally been falling over the last 15 years. Comparison is also made with other local authority areas, and it is noted that of those areas which have adopted over-concentration policies, they are generally university towns with much higher levels of HMOs. In conclusion, the report shows that the overall number and distribution of HMOs in the council area does not justify an over-concentration or over-provision policy. I'm happy to move the recommendations in the report, and no intervention is required at this stage, and continue to monitor the situation going forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garner. Councillor Bouse.
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to second this very clear report on the subject.
Okay, thank you. As there is no amendment, there is no debate, but obviously the opportunity is there for group leaders. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I really welcome this report. I think, as has been referenced earlier on, there are a lot of misconceptions running around. HMOs are a really important, vital part of the housing market. I suspect quite a number of us around this room have actually stayed in an HMO at some point in our lives. I know I have when I was a student and a young person. A lot of young people who are not ready to take on a full tenancy will stay in HMOs. So I really appreciate this report. I think it's excellent that it's setting out the factual information that has been requested, and hopefully it will have a good impact in terms of the misconceptions. And I welcome the commitment to keeping an eye on the trends in case there is a change in the future.
Okay, thank you. Bailey Kerr.
No comment.
Councillor Spears.
Just to reiterate my concern about if HMOs are all congested in the one place, it can change the character of the area and cause concern for locals. But assurances have been given under a planning legislation in Falkirk that that doesn't happen. So I'll await to see what happens in the future and what my constituents bring back to me.
Okay, Councillor Murtagh.
I welcome this very clear and helpful report. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Are we happy to agree?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on now to the tax incremental finance update, which I will now open up for questions to officers. Councillor Patterson.
Thanks. Yeah, just a few questions. I welcome the report. Obviously, it's a lot of encouraging news coming forward, but I think a question that's probably at the forefront of a lot of people's minds is point 11, the Westfields project, which is down as recorded as having completion in spring of 2027. Can we have a guesstimate as to when the traffic will be free flowing? So ultimately, presumably in 2027, that's when it's absolutely done, polished off. But when will it be normalised for drivers in the area.
Okay, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Convener, I might bring Alistair in with the specific details and the phases of the works, but as we've outlined in the report, planned site completion date is spring 2027, so there will be disruption located down there until then.
Hi, thanks through convener. Yeah, the works are actually progressing as planned at the moment. You will start to see some significant changes. The traffic management will begin to flip over towards Christmas and New Year. That'll be staged, and as different areas of the works become available, the traffic will move on to the new side to allow the existing carriageways to be reconstructed. So I think you will see some very big changes over the next few months, and we are proposing to have a separate session with members this side of Christmas to have a full update, and if there are any specific questions on the project, there'll be an opportunity to look at that in detail.
That's very much welcome. Thanks for that. And then just to jump down to 5.24, when we're talking about the Grangemouth flood protection, there was comment on that we're waiting for local hearings to be arranged before it's fed back to councillors. Just, are you able to give any indication on what the timeline is at? Is it weeks, months, years? Just an indication of a timeline would be great.
Convener, as Alistair just whispered in my ear, we've now had confirmation that the local hearing will take place near the end of January, and we're waiting to confirm the venue and the specific dates.
That's very welcome. Thank you for that. And then finally from me, 5.31, the report on the Avon Gorge. It also does make reference to that it's going to have a more specific report back at a later date. Is there any indication of this, again, weeks, months, years?
Convener, the intention is we'll provide a detailed briefing to elected members, and I would envisage that to happen probably near the end of this year, early next year, once we have further information from both Transport Scotland and West Lothian in terms of their future commitment.
Wonderful, thank you. On that note, and I'm sorry if I'm having spoilers here ahead of that briefing in December, should we expect at that point to hear of any conversations with the Grangemouth Freeports, given its significance in the area and how heavily it would rely on that road?
The Forth Green Freeport is certainly supportive. The partners are supportive. The local partners are supportive of us on Avon Gorge. At this stage, there is no suggestion that Forth Green Freeport non-domestic rates revenues that may come in the future will be utilised for any projects. They need to be determined through an investment plan that will come to this council for approval. But they're certainly willing partners in terms of advocating for the link to be created.
I am sure they are willing partners for an improvement on a road that they will rely heavily upon. Yeah, I'll be interested to hear more about that when the time comes. And just, sorry, it's not directly involved in this report, but I feel like it is a pertinent issue when we're talking about this, and that, you know, these are long overdue works. And as we know, we are very willing participants in it, and I don't hold officers accountable on any stretch for that. But given the circumstance that we're in, what can be done in the meantime to minimise issues for commuters this winter?
Specifically in relation to Avon Gorge?
Yes.
So clearly there has been improvements made on the West Lothian side. They were awarded transport safety funding, and they've now put the traffic lights in, and that has improved both the direction in both ways. That's not necessarily the full solution though, so certainly it is an improvement. From our perspective, we're currently pressing Scottish Government, Transport Scotland primarily because we have updated the business case. We've done a lot of that activity as we previously reported and as outlined in the report. We don't want to see that work and effort going to waste, so that's why we want to have that further engagement as we're going through that process. We hopefully be able to update members either at the end of the year or in the new year via a briefing note and maybe a short briefing session.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. Page 307, 4.8. You mentioned here on infrastructure projects around the M9 Junction 6 Earls Gates roundabout improvement. A road I travel quite often. I must admit, the roundabout is now completely swamped with traffic. I hear the Eastfield development, I think you call it Westfield, but he's maybe got it wrong in the map. I believe that the delays are going to go until the middle of 2007, and that this has been caused by extensive drainage work. Well, when you drive along Fell Dubs, before you get to the bog, you realise why it's called these names. Can you tell me if that's the case? What improvement works have been done at Earls Gates Junction? And is there a high voltage electrical cables being put in, which is causing further delay to the completion of this work?
Convener, the Earlsgate roundabout improvements was actually one of the very first TIF projects that was delivered, and it involved traffic lighting and signalling, and it operated, I think it was 2015. Alistair's just showed me, so way before me. I was still in shorts at that time. In terms of the works along Westfield and along past West Mains, there has been a huge amount of work done there. It has involved utilities diversions. It has involved drainage works. This is a major £35 million project that has been delivered there with infrastructure to deliver what will in effect be major road enhancements. So there will always be those aspects on utilities. I'm not aware of anything specifically in relation to an HV cable, but as Alistair has advised earlier, all the works are going in accordance with the programme that we have previously reported on. So we can certainly investigate the suggestion that the HV works have been undertaken. It wouldn't surprise me if there was HV cables. It is a major arterial route. There is a lot of infrastructure in that area, but again, that's something that we could investigate, but it's certainly not led to any delays.
Okay, thank you. I just say roll on 2007.
Spring 27.
Okay. Are there any? There are no further questions. I will go to Councillor Garner. Move the report.
Thank you, Convener. And I love hearing some of the local news for these places that maybe some of us aren't aware. The Falkirk Tax Incremental Finance Initiative, yes, it'll be the last I'm referring to it, that'll be the TIF from now on, is a 25-year programme designed to increase development activity, attract investment and create jobs in the Falkirk area. The TIF funding model is completely separate from other council capital and revenue budgets. The report provides an update on the progress made, which we've heard of, across the TIF projects. It's pleasing to note that the £36 million of investment in infrastructure has been delivered with works at the M9 Junction 5, Earlsgate Roundabout, Grand Sable Road, and the major works at Westfield, some people call it Eastfield, that are currently underway. Also, works to improve the Icehouse Brae, which is between Lauriston and Earlsgate, are due to commence next year. All of these have and will contribute to the delivery of developments to improve our local economy. As outlined in the previous report today, Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme and £400,000 has been sought for design and future delivery of the project. This could bring in an additional £1.6 million of funding from the Scottish Government. The report also provides a short update on Avon Gorge, which is a Phase 2 project, and I do agree the traffic lights have made a great improvement there, where officers continue to meet with Transport Scotland and West Lothian Council to progress. A full design review has been undertaken over the past year, and a revised outline business case has been progressed. A separate briefing for members will be provided in the future as the project progresses. In conclusion, again, good progress continues to be made on delivery of the TIF programme. Over 135,000 square metres of new commercial business space has been developed, supporting over 2,100 new jobs to the Falkirk area. It continues to provide a valuable investment programme that's complementary to both the growth deal and the Fourth Green Freeport, and has enabled the securing of other funding, for instance, the Levelling Up Fund, to support the local economy, generate jobs and provide transport infrastructure, whilst also support our long-term carbon reduction objectives. I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I'm happy to formally second. No amendment, therefore no debate, but I will give opportunities to group leaders. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. We have no amendment. We welcome the report. We just wish that the TIF funding was more than it is, but we also welcome the work that the officers are doing to try and get more funding for some of the projects that are dear to our hearts, but not progressing. So thank you.
Thank you, Billy Kerr.
Just quickly, convener, I think it's an interesting time for Falkirk. I'll be glad when 2027's here. However, taking the hit the now, I'm sure it will benefit. As mentioned in the report, the Cadgers Bray, the traffic lights there, everybody who uses that road will say how good it is. I thought a roundabout would be better, but traffic lights are absolutely fantastic. And I can't wait till the Icehouse Bray section starts. That allows the main lorries to not to go up the opposite side. Exciting times for Falkirk. Just wish I didn't want to wish my life away, but I wish the traffic was better. But aye, it was exciting times, and we're in good hands with Paul and Alistair and the team. Thank you.
Thank you. I share people's frustrations when it takes me 20 minutes to get out the end of my road because of the diverted traffic, but that's the price we have to pay for progress. Councillor Spears?
Any improvement is an improvement. I just hope we don't have the same trouble as we've had it in Shire roundabout, where it lasted something like 2 years and we're now resurfacing, which is causing further problems with the 2 roundabouts on the south side of our town. We need to try and get it right first time. We're only going to get this money once. So I would recommend to our officers that great scrutiny work is done on our contractors, so we don't have to keep going back and replacing and repairing stuff after a couple of years.
Yeah, Councillor Murtagh? No, okay, thank you. We're happy to agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving into the corporate risk management quarterly update and questions to officers first. I am going to take Chair's privilege and just ask a couple of questions to begin with. Amanda's here, hopefully, will be able to answer them. There's a number of assurance risks within the plan where we have the current risk is high and the target is medium, social work in particular. And also health and safety and well-being, the current risk is high and the target's inherently high. With limited assurance, what actions are being taken to address this and try to increase the assurance level and decrease the risk?
Thank you, convener. So I think, first of all, I would say that hopefully the information that's on this paper will reflect some of the information that's come to, say, audit committee or scrutiny committee that's where there's been reports provided for specific reports with updates and action plans. I don't know whether it's maybe worth saying that for health and safety, where the target risk is inherently high, it's really one of these situations where there's a couple of risks we have that because the impact is so significant, it will always have a high risk rating. So that doesn't mean that there's not a significant amount of work happening to try and reduce the risk, but because of that high impact, I think another example is the public protection for harm to adults and children. Because the impact is so significant, that will always have an inherently high risk. So we have, for each risk that we have, members will have seen, particularly, I think we've focused on it in the training, there's a series of mitigating actions for each risk that we have, and those are monitored on a quarterly basis by the services. So I don't know whether, I'm not sure if there's anyone here from social work that may want to come in specifically on that one, or if anyone wants to pick up health and safety.
Okay, I think we've got Sarah.
Yep.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, convener. Yep, happy to come in on your question. So the risk that relates to social work and social care, so it's a combined risk across both workforces, and both members will be familiar with that. We certainly do have challenges. These are not just local challenges, they're not just Falkirk's challenges, they are very much national challenges around the recruitment and retention of social care and social work staff. So we do keep a real vigilance on this particular matter. We do have a very active recruitment and retention working group, specifically around occupational therapy and social work posts. We are constantly looking at different ways of ensuring that we have suitable numbers and obviously of well-trained social workers to work in our communities. And social care worker activity is very strong. We are not only making sure that we keep a really close eye on how we can be really innovative around recruitment and retention of social care staff, but also making sure that we've got really good workforce development opportunities to be able to retain them. Hopefully that's helpful.
Anne, you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, convener. It was just to come in on the health, safety and wellbeing aspect. So as Amanda said, this is one of those risks where if we get it wrong, the risk is high and it has a high impact. There is a programme of work in place and well underway to assess that risk. We don't want to provide substantial assurance on that until that programme of work has been undertaken. That includes a series of audits around our higher risk workplaces, some of the more frontline facing workplaces, and those are absolutely our priority. So that is being done. Anything that comes out of that, we would have an action plan in place, and we would hope that that will be completed by March, which would next year, which would then enable us to provide a much more substantial assurance around that level of risk.
Thank you. There are also two areas or two services that are outstanding, being place services and TC&C services. It says that they will be completed by Q4, but will that be able to be achieved? Page 321, sorry.
Thanks, convener. So that's for the service risk priorities. So I think for TC&C, the reviews of our service risks are complete, but I think we have some self-assessments that are outstanding. So essentially we have a series of governance groups, and those governance groups are the groups that review all the risks, have responsibility for developing those mitigating actions, and then also look at the assurance level. And so we have two of those for TC&C particularly, which are outstanding, which is Council of the Future Board and Resilience Partnership. But we have been doing work on that. So we have been looking at the effectiveness, for example, of the Council of the Future Board, and we know that we're going to bring a paper back to scrutiny to talk a little bit about that at the turn of the year. There's also a significant amount of work happening within the Resilience Partnership. I think Kenny's gone off the call now, but we can get some more information on that. Jill Pringle's on the call because at the top of page 321, it refers to the service risk priorities for education and those reviews. And I know that Jill's sort of heading up a significant piece of work to do a lot to look across those risks, and particularly to work with the head teachers. And then I'll maybe let Malcolm come in.
Yeah, is Jill able to comment on that, or sorry?
Yeah. Hi, sorry, thanks, convener. Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, so just as Amanda's pointed out, as new managers of the service, Education Services are undertaking a review of key corporate risks arising from the recent separation of children's services into Education Services and Health and Social Care Partnership. So the review is currently being led by the Business Management Coordinator in collaboration with the Council's Risk Coordinator. and obviously moving forward, education services retain responsibility for risks linked to both school-based processes and corporate functions. So basically the review we're undertaking at the moment, the initial findings were indicating that we possibly needed to enhance some governance processes, and that then reflected in our annual assurance statement. So accordingly, we've made it a priority to reinforce governance structures and to establish consistent, transparent procedures to ensure compliance and accountability. So once we've undertaken that review, the outcomes of that will directly inform the development of a revised framework for collaboration with school leaders and heads of centre in particular, to ensure that future annual assurance statements demonstrate a clear and shared understanding of governance, accountability and risk management. So essentially for these reasons, as a new management team in August 2024, we didn't fully sign off the 2024-25 assurance statement. However, it's anticipated with all that work that's that's ongoing at the moment, we will be in a position to sign the 25-26 annual assurance statement.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
My final question is whether or not within these reports, even on an annual basis, if we can include a section around horizon scanning to look at emerging risks, so that can be factored in and as we go forward, so that members can be fully informed and cited on things that may be coming down the line.
Thanks, Convener. I'm happy to look at the structure of the report to build in a section on horizon scanning. I suppose I would just provide some reassurance that it is something that we actively consider as services when we're updating our risks. Also, when we go to CMT and so CMT get a quarterly update on the corporate risk register, and then also the governance groups that oversee those risks also consider that aspect. And then the final thing I would say is that we've instigated a process whereby we have a session with members of the executive to consider the risk register in advance of it being published. And so if members have some considerations or some ideas they want to take us to take into consideration in terms of horizon scanning, there's an opportunity for that as well. But I think it's maybe about bringing all that together into a section within the report. So happy to take that forward.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll just open up if there's any other questions that MD would wish to ask in relation to this item. No.
Convener, I think there's something on your mic.
That better? Apologies. Risk is everybody's responsibility throughout the organisation at whatever level and that be managed appropriately. And we have a role as elected members as well. My understanding is still not everybody has taken on board the risk training, and I would encourage people to participate within that, as it will actually help to clarify what our elected role is in going forward. But I thank the teams and the services for the work that they do in producing this risk register and monitoring it on a regular basis, and assuring us as elected members that we are a sound organisation that is planning for the future as best we can based on the information that we have. And continuous improvement around that is something that I think is in me embedded within the services as well. So I'm happy to move the report, having asked the relevant questions. And Councillor Devine.
I'm happy to formally second it.
Okay, I'll go very briefly to group leaders. Councillor Hannah.
Very briefly, thank you, Amanda, and all the staff who've been involved in writing the report. It does give us assurance that our officers are keeping a close eye on the areas of risk. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bailey Kerr.
No comment.
Councillor Spears.
I say this is the first time I've seen counter-terrorism mentioned in a report to this council. not hear? Is that better for you? I couldn't hear you. You weren't using your mic. First time I've ever heard counter-terrorism mentioned in a council meeting. I'm pleased that work is going ahead and we are looking at the risks that we take. Money is tight, as we all know, so risk is important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murtagh. No, okay, we happy to agree? Thank you. Next item is Treasury Management. It's the interim review, and I will open it up for questions. No, no questions. Okay. I know how popular Treasury Management is, but I have to say that Amanda does an amazing job along with the team. And in moving the report, just to comment on how important a Treasury Management is, because that is how we can be effectively and sustainable and deliver investment programmes for our communities. It's particularly important in the current economic climate with weak or limited growth and persistent inflationary pressures in particular. Public sector has a role in supporting growth and through investment, and despite the global uncertainty and tax burdens, there has been some limited progress. Financial markets are predicting that there is a potential for change in the base rate to support that, but there's no certainty at this timescale. As a result, short-term borrowing still remains the most advantageous, giving opportunities to negotiate loan charges as they mature is the other opportunity for savings and pressures to be taken off the revenue budget. This is why it's important that we have a continued review of our capital programme to ensure that it is realistic and deliverable. I'm therefore happy to move the Treasury Management interim review. Councillor Bowes.
I am content to formally second.
Thank you. I'll go to group leaders. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you again to the staff who've put so much work into this.
Daily Kerr.
No comment.
Councillor Spears.
No comment.
And I don't know if Councillor Murtagh's still with us. No. I'll assume she has no comment as she's not on screen. Okay, next item is the revenue financial projections, and it's questions to officers first. I've got a couple that I'm going to ask, and I'll keep them very brief. It's much of the underspend in the revenue projection is related to employee costs. Just will these be one-off, or will there be a proportion that's recurring? And how will the recurring costs be managed as deleted or just within service budget?
Thank you, Convener. So I think in the financial strategy, we flagged up that we were doing a review of the sort of underspends that happened across the council. And we took a paper to CMT just last week to set out our approach to doing that. So obviously, because most of it does relate to employee costs, that does need some careful consideration with chief officers and service unit managers to understand the impact and why exactly the savings arisen. In some cases, that saving may be, or that underspend may be earmarked for a saving in future years, for example. In some cases, it may be a post that has been kept vacant because it's helping to support a post elsewhere, or in some cases it may just be a sort of historic post that's not been filled and that we've actually managed to deliver services without filling. So there's a whole different range of scenarios that could be leading to that underspend. Our proposal is, and a CMT agreed, that we're going to go through a process. We're about to send out information to service unit managers and heads of service to explain the process that we're going to go through. It may well be that that results in recurring savings. It may well be that it results in some sort of temporary savings that we operate through a vacancy management style system. So we're just sort of working all that through, but we have a plan in place to do it. We are going to report it through the council in the future. So again, it'll be part of updates for future reports and also in terms of the scrutiny report. And that will be completed in time for the 26-27 budget.
Okay, thank you. When will we be in a better position to know what the IGB deficit will be for this year and next, as this will obviously be important for our budgeting going forward?
I mean, I think you're right. That's a hugely critical part of the budget and the financial strategy. We know that the IGB are doing a significant amount of work on this, and we have been working directly, particularly with children and families, to look at their position going forward. There is a meeting with ourselves, NHS Forth Valley, and our colleagues from the IGB scheduled for a couple of weeks' time. And I think at that point we'll have a much clearer sense of where we think things are going and what we're going to be factoring into our budgets. So I'm hopeful that sort of before the turn of the year we'll have a much clearer sense of where the IGB thinks it's going, what we think the impact on the council will be. Of course, it is all so ultimately dependent on what happens in the January budget, whether there's any funding specifically allocated to the IGB, etc.
My final question is in paragraph 5.2.2, the transport review and environmental options are amber. Why are they amber, and will they have the ability to become back on track and deliver the savings as anticipated?
Thank you. I could maybe start off and pass on. So, as you've said, both of these projects are rated amber at this point and flagged as not being on track. What I would say though is that any savings for 25-26, we're comfortable and confident that those will be delivered. So that's reflected in paragraph 5.2.1, where all our savings for 25-26 are marked green. So amber in respect to the financial savings will be potentially for future year savings that we're still trying to work our way through. My understanding, and as the others may want to come in, is that the transport is amber because it's sort of relatively new. I'll look.
Thank you, Convener. Convener, the transport review came on the back of a self-assessment of transport right across the council. So there was a big piece of work undertaken to look at the various areas of transport we provide, including employee transport right through to transport used for service delivery. So there's a project that was formed out of that, and we're at the early stages of making sure that we have the actual correct terms of reference and the savings identified against the actual budget spend before we would want to commit to that. So it's a project in early stages, but we have identified through the self-assessment that there are savings to be achieved, and we're confident we can achieve those. So that will appear in future versions of this update.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. You made reference to the Scottish Government's announcement of the budget in January. I wonder if you could say a little more, because this year we have the UK budget announcement being later than normal and the Scottish Government budget and their allocation to local authorities being later. How is that going to impact on your ability to give us the accurate figures in time for the Falkirk Council budget?
Thank you, Councillor Hannah. It will be very tight. So we are anticipating our budget on the 13th of January, and that will be our initial financial settlement information. We're anticipating we'll get it on the same day, which will be helpful. I think I've maybe said to members that what tends to happen is there's quite a sort of protracted period of back and forward to double check a lot of the detail and the figures and the allocations and things like that, and that can take some time. So I suppose that the sort of most immediate impact will be that usually we get the budget in December and then we take a report to the January council to set out the main points of the budget. I don't anticipate that we'll be in a position to do that this year. We certainly wouldn't be able to make the deadlines. So I think so that will be sort of an immediate impact, but we know that we have to sort of 6th of March. I remember now. I'm now down to myself if it's the 5th of the 6th for the council meeting. That date's really set because logistically for us to be able to get our council tax bills out, which we have to set our council tax by the 11th of March, but actually logistically we have to set it earlier. So we don't have a sort of choice but to meet that deadline. It is going to be very tight, and I suppose depending on the level of queries and complexity with the settlement, there may be some things that we have to caveat a little more than we would normally, but hopefully not. I'm hoping that we'll have resolved any issues by then, but I think it's just going to be a sort of much more pressured time.
Thank you. And all holidays cancelled.
Councillor Spears.
Page 346, 5.126, council tax is now projected to be slightly above budget. Could we have a bit more in-depth meaning of what this actually has been said?
Yeah, so when we project how much income we think we'll get from a council tax increase, we will make assumptions about things like the amount of new build houses that are coming on stream, and so how much council tax will be charged for them and at what level. We'll make assumptions about the level of non-payment of council tax, all these kind of things. So my understanding from what we've been told from our colleagues in Revenues and Benefits is that there's been slightly more new build properties come on stream than we would have anticipated, and so that means that we're getting slightly more income in than we would have anticipated.
Do you have any figures for the non-payment?
I don't have any figures in front of me. I had got some recently from Mr. Ferguson, so I will look those out and send them on, but I don't want to try and quote them off the top of my head because I know I'll get them wrong.
Okay, if there are no further questions, the current position of the revenue budget is on track, but it has to be recognised there are a number of factors that could still have an adverse impact. The budget projection currently is showing to be an underspend of 2.439 million, and while that is good to see, that and it's been supported by a better than expected council tax income. It is also noted there are a number of underspends associated with staff vacancies, which can assist in the short term but cannot be relied on going forward. Recognise that the budget allocation to the IGIB would not address the predicted budget gap for this year, and that additional one-off non-recurring funding will be required. Contingency fund was set aside by the council to support that, which remains at 2.592 million. However, there continues to be pressures in relation to adult care, and while there is a lot of work ongoing to implement a recovery plan, the final position, which has potential to increase, is still to be determined. Madison Primary School allocation is clearly necessary due to the need to support the alternative arrangement costs associated with the damage and reinstatement of Madison Primary School, and it's appropriate use of reserves for us to do that. Housing revenue, acknowledging that there was a need to use the reserves last year with the agreement that we plan to put back in replace. HR is currently an underspend of approximately 1 million. It's expected to rise to 1.5 million by the end of the financial year, and that would then be returned to the reserves. While the reserves would still be below the 5 million threshold, it would make some inroads into returning to that figure. While the current position to deliver a balanced budget is on track, it continues to be robust monitoring by the services. I'm therefore happy to move the recommendations as in section 2. Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to second.
Thank you. We have 2 items left. We can break for lunch now if people would prefer. The alternative is we continue and finish the session and then have lunch. But I'm in the hands of folks in the room.
Happy to continue.
Happy to continue unless there's anyone who has urgent need of sustenance.
I just apologise if my stomach makes weird noises.
It wasn't your stomach that was making the noises. Okay, that's absolutely fine. We will see if we can do these as timelessly as possible. Next item is the capital financial projection, and I'm going to open it up for questions. No questions? No. As has been said through our treasury management, that supports our capital programme and the borrowing. Some changes in the refinancing has actually brought down the levels of borrowing, but it is important that we continue to oversee the capital programme on a regular basis in order to make sure that it is on track and can be delivered, as that investment within our communities is quite critical. There has been a request in the papers to a technical accounting of repurposing some funding in order to actually complete the projects that are there. And on that, I'm happy to move the capital programme, the capital projection as in the papers. Councillor Rice?
Again, happy to say.
I will just ask if anybody wishes to make comment.
No comment.
Okay, thank you. We come to our final item, and it is a quasi-judicial item, which is a community asset transfer. Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener. I don't think I'll need to ask Mr Moody for a rule on this one. I think I'll need to declare an interest here since I'm the chairman of Dunny-Pace FC.
And you will absent yourself and we will count the sandwiches.
I'm away to get into the sandwiches. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to Mr Keswick.
Mr Kettrick, your mic is not on.
Apologies, and should be considered upon the merits of the proposals, recognising compliance with the necessary statutory requirements. The Executive is asked to agree the full ownership asset transfer of Bottom Castle Park Pavilion to Dunny-Pace Football Club, who are a SKIO, at the proposed purchase price of £1, reflecting the benefits that will derive from the project, and to agree and authorise the Director of Place Services to prepare and include within conditions in the decision notice allowing the Council the option to reacquire the property, and agree to the transfer that will be subject to any existing burdens or restrictions in the Council's title. Members should note that the assessments undertaken are compliant in terms of the Community Empowerment Scotland Act 2015 and the Disposal of Land by Local Authorities Scotland Regulations 2010, and therefore consent recommendation is to instruct and authorise the Director of Place Services to issue the decision notice and agree to conclude all the necessary arrangements. Transfer is considered appropriate and is recommended by officers to progress. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr Kettrick. Any questions from officers?
I'm happy to second.
Happy to agree.
We can't hear you, Convener, but we're lip reading.
Okay, it's obviously been a very long meeting and I'm running out on the batteries and the mics. That brings us to the conclusion of this morning's executive. We will look to again to convene as close to 2 o'clock as we can giving an opportunity for members to have something to eat for the special full council. But thanks everybody for their attendance this morning.